Dawn spilled across the sky in palest rose and pearl, its light creeping over the towers of Winterfell, with the patient certainty of the changing seasons. Below, the gods' wood stirred, boughs draped in half-frozen dew, ravens lifting lazy wings from the broken arch of the old keep. Jon Snow lingered at his bedchamber window and watched it all grow gold. Even now, after the decision that had altered the course of his life, he rose early by instinct, muscles tuned to drill and duty. Only now there was no clean-swept courtyard of the Night's Watch waiting for him. No Maester Aemon's calm voice beckoning him toward vows and black. Winterfell itself had become his calling. A heavier cloak than any the wall might have draped across his shoulders. His breath ghosted on the glass as he considered the day ahead. 3 mornings past, Lord Eddard Stark had summoned the household, and, in words measured yet resolute, named his son, publicly for the first time, as Jon Stark of Winterfell, natural-born raised to true-born heir in Robb's stead, until the young wolf returned from the south. There had been no pomp, only duty. But within the great hall, Jon had felt the stone tremble beneath his boots as the words left his father's lips. A promise older than tears had been broken open, and from its marrow an impossible future bled forth. He turned from the window, fastening the gray cloak Ned had given him, dyed darker than snow, clasped at the throat with a direwolf wrought in beaten pewter. The fabric smelled of cedar chests and the crisp air of the crypts. Jon drew it about his shoulders and felt the weight settle. A lord's weight. He had dreamed of recognition, in the secret corners of boyhood, where want grows like ivy. Yet, he had never wished for it to come at the cost of oath and brotherhood. He would have been content to stand the wall with Sam, to face the endless night that haunted his childhood stories. But Sam was gone south with the old bear now. And Jon had to learn to walk these halls in daylight, unshadowed by his father's silences or Lady Catelyn's cold indifference. Ghost padded beside him, paws soundless, red eyes reflecting torch glow. Already the direwolf had sensed the change. Kennel masters who once flinched from the pale beast now bowed heads in cautious acknowledgement. Ghost accepted their courtesy with the same inscrutable calm he afforded everything. Though at night he paced the corridors like a sentinel, as if aware that new enemies might slip beneath Winterfell's gate the moment Jon's back turned. They descended the stair in tandem and crossed the yard. The sour tang of forge smoke drifted from the armory. Mikken hammered away, sparks shooting like fireflies that refused the dawn. Jon's mind flitted to steel and leather awaiting inspection. His father had said plainly, "A lord must know every link in the chain that binds his hall. If one weakens, the hall falls." So Jon walked among the links each day, listening, learning. He passed Sir Roderick instructing squires, 3 boys too small for hauberks yet, wooden swords clacking as they mimicked heroes. Jon offered correction on a wrist angle here, a foot placement there. The lads straightened spines when he spoke. In their eyes he read wonder and apprehension blended. For was he not only yesterday the bastard who sparred harder than any but still stood apart? Now they bowed to him, swinging wide their sticks. It felt wrong and necessary, all at once. By mid-morning he climbed the winding path that skirted the first keep. All around lay the busy sprawl of Winterfell. Steam from the hot pools, distant churn of the granary mill, voices of washerwomen echoing off stone. He paused where the wall's edge met an outcrop of crumbling merlon, and let wind lift his cloak. Memory tugged. Hours spent here pretending the battlements were the wall itself. Bran beside him chattering of knights, Theon boasting of ironborn reavers he would one day command. Bran was still his eager self, though smaller now for the absence of Robb, and Theon rode with his father. Every shifting piece reminded Jon that time moved like an unseen host across the board. Footsteps approached. He faced the noise and found Arya, hair tangled from some fresh mischief, cheeks pink with the cold. She grinned. "Sir Jon Stark?" she teased, executing a sloppy curtsy that would have made Septa Mordain faint. "Does my lord remember how to fence, or has all this lord business dulled your edge?" He could not help smiling. "Best keep your guard up, little sister." She darted in with a wooden practice sword no bigger than a dagger. Jon blocked her with gloved palm and lightly tapped her shoulder. Arya scowled, then laughed. breath huffing white. "I'll cut you one of these days." "Maybe," he conceded. "But not today." He ruffled her hair, a gesture she tolerated only from him. Her eyes softened. Within them flickered the same unease he carried. Change roiling like a storm beyond the horizon. She would not speak it, but he knew. Ned's decision weighed on her, as on them all. "Father wants you in the Solar," she said. "There's a rider from White Harbor." Jon thanked her and hurried down. In the Solar, morning came in shafts through narrow windows. Ned Stark stood near the hearth, gray graven lines across his brow. Seated was Ser Wendell Manderley, helm tucked beneath his arm. Robb had ridden south at King Robert's command, answering the call for Warden of the North to bring swords against the Lannisters. Yet war brewed slowly, and messengers flowed like restless crows. Jon inclined his head. "You sent for me, father?" Ned's look was equal parts pride and caution. "Ser Wendell brings news of supply tariffs, and I would have my heir learn the cost of grain." Tariffs. Grain. Words he'd scarcely heeded before. Jon straightened. Ser Wendell sketched a bow, mustache twitching. "Lord Jon, White Harbor stands ready to provision Winterfell, but ships from the bite whisper of iron-born raiders further north. Silver's scarce, iron scarcer." Jon listened to the numbers, bushels, barrels, measures of salt and fish. When he spoke, voice steady, he repeated the figures precisely, offering alternative terms gleaned from knights poring over ledgers with Maester Luwin. Ser Wendell blinked, then nodded approval. Ned said nothing until the envoy had gone, then clasped Jon's shoulder. "A lord's sword is only as sharp as his counting," Ned said. "You've done well." Jon felt warmth bloom in his chest. Rare praise. "I learned from the best, my lord." They shared a quiet moment. Afterwards Jon climbed to the rookery, where Luwin unfurled a fresh parchment. Ravens croaked, feathers rustling. He penned replies to Manderley, ironed by the Maester's counsel. Each letter carried the new seal, a dire wolf unchained, sigil of Stark, yet subtly different, signifying his demi-blood turned whole. When the ink dried, he pressed wax and lowered the metal stamp. The seal cooled fast, as if eager to set. Afternoon, sun, slanted low by the time he strode toward the training yard again. There, men-at-arms drilled beneath Sir Roderick's bark, steel flashing. Jon watched posture and tempo, offering small corrections that felt like echoes of instruction once aimed at him. He sparred briefly with Quent, a solid lad of 18, trading careful blows until Quent's blade slipped. Jon trapped the edge, disarmed him, then handed the sword back with a nod. He made each lesson gentle but firm. Shame bred resentment, father had told him. Respect bred loyalty. The clatter of hooves at the main gate interrupted practice. Jon glimpsed dust cloud and crimson surcoat. Jory Castle returning from the King's Road, letter in hand. It bore the royal seal. Jon's stomach tightened. He followed Jory to the great hall where Ned met them. Cloak trailing, the letter smelled of wax and southern sun. As Ned read, his face hardened. "Robert summons me to King's Landing," he said finally. The words echoed above empty benches. "He will have me as hand once more." Jon's mind raced. The South, court intrigue, the Queen's serpents, 1,000 snares for an honorable man. When? A fortnight. Ned met Jon's eye. "And you will remain here, as Lord of Winterfell in truth." The phrase struck like a warhammer. Remain, Lord in truth. All his new-forged certainty trembled. The Starks had ruled the North for 8,000 years, but never had Jon imagined standing sentinel without his father's shadow. He opened his mouth, closed it. Ned understood. He stepped close. "I have lost one son to war, though he yet lives. I'll not lose another." A faint smile flickered. "You will guard these lands, hold them for Robb's return and for my own." Jon swallowed past a lump of snow and ash. "I will, father." That night, he walked the battlements beneath a vault of stars. Wind carried scents of pine and peat fires. Ghost trotted, ears swiveling. Jon thought of the party that would ride south. His father, Sansa, Septa Mordain. Arya had begged to go and been refused. Bran would stay. Still too young, and Rickon was barely out of swaddling breeches. Winterfell would be Jon's to shield. He traced his fingers along the frost-filmed stone. Long ago, Grey Kings stood here. He could almost feel their iron-shod boots thudding through time. Bastard no longer, yet belonging felt as remote as the moon. Still, he would meet dawn as its steward. Days slipped into a rhythm. He rose before first light, broke fast with porridge and honey, then walked the holds. Butcher's ledger, grain tally, smithy stock. He sat in session twice a week hearing disputes. A farmer claiming wolves had taken goats. A scullion caught stealing wine. He weighed coin against mercy, practicing the craft of judgment. Each verdict left him wrung but resolute. One raw morning he joined Maester Luwin at the solar hearth. Scrolls lay strewn, maps of old King's Road tolls, letters from Deepwood Mott, who muttered of wildling forays near the stony shore. Jon studied the map, tracing valleys, mountain passes. Send word to Lady Glover, he decided, that Winterfell will dispatch 20 riders. Shall we stand with her people? Luwin recorded the order, quill scratching. A swift response, my lord. The Glovers will take heart. They must. Jon's gaze lingered on the drawn shoreline, jagged like wolf's teeth. A lord's voice rang inside his skull. If one link weakens, he would not let the chain break. That evening, invited by habit more than hunger, he sought the great hall. Fires roared at either end, banners stirred above crossbeams. Bran sat perched on the high bench, feet dangling. Arya lounged beside him, hunkered over a trencher. Catelyn Stark presided at the long table's head, eyes following Jon with the old guardedness. Though less bitter now that his status bore Ned's command, she inclined her head, barely, and he returned the courtesy, seating himself near the middle where household knights gathered. Conversation ebbed as he approached, then resumed. Men wanted his ear on fortification repairs, spear halves needing replacement. He listened carefully, sipping watered ale. Suddenly a hush rippled along the benches. Catelyn stood. My son, Jon Stark, will address you, she declared, voice carrying. Surprise flickered across many faces, not least her own perhaps. Yet she continued, Lord Eddard rides south. Until his return, Lord Jon speaks with my blessing. Jon rose slowly. Candle glow danced across the hall. For a heartbeat, the air stretched taut and breakable. Then his words came, measured as Ned's had been the day he named him. He spoke of unity, of winter's coming, of vigilance. He thanked the household for loyalty and promised reward for diligence. When he finished, men thumped fists to table. The sound thundered like hooves across the north. Later, after stew and bread, Jon retreated to the godswood. Snowflakes whirled, fine as sifted flour. The heart tree loomed, face weeping red resin. Jon knelt and laid a hand upon its ancient bark. Beneath his palm thrummed secrets older than language. He closed his eyes. Keep them safe, he whispered. To the old gods, to whatever listened. Keep him safe. Ghost pressed close, fur bristling. Somewhere, a branch snapped. Jon's sword cleared its sheath with a feathered hiss. He scanned the darkness. The direwolf snarled at shadows, but no threat emerged. Still, Jon felt eyes upon him, eyes without warmth. He lingered until calm returned, then sheathed his blade and rose. In days that followed, the castle Kvasir spread tales. A pale wolf stalking the battlements, a lord who conversed with trees, frost whites glimpsed far north. Jon lent ear, but gave no credence. The wall lay leagues away, and winter had not yet truly found its voice. Still, he posted extra guards at night, trusting ghosts' instincts. On the morning of departure, Winterfell gathered in the yard. Horses stamped, harness jingled. Ned Stark wore plain wool over mail. Sansa clutched a cloak trimmed with red fox. Jon approached his father, handed him the bundle of parchments he had prepared. Tallies, forecasts, lists of supplies requested. Ned accepted them, eyes proud and sad all at once. I leave the north in good hands, he said softly. Jon nodded, Unable to form reply, he embraced Sansa, whispered for her to keep Arya out of trouble in his absence. She laughed, tearful. Then Arya flung herself at him, skinny arms tight round his middle. "Right," she demanded. "And teach Bran to shoot better." "I will," he promised. She stepped back, wiping her nose. Ned mounted. The column filed out beneath Winterfell's great oak gates, banners snapping. Jon and the remaining Starks watched until dawn swallowed hoofprints. Only when silence settled did Jon truly feel the emptiness left behind. The first challenge came sooner than expected. A rider from Molestown arrived, half-starved and raving. He claimed wildlings had breached the abandoned watchposts along the gorge, raiding crofters' sheds. Jon convened council. Sir Roderick, Maester Luwin, Catelyn, Hallis Mullen, and the old master of hounds. "The night's watch is stretched thin," Roderick growled, twisting his great white mustache. "We cannot rely on them to police poachers this far south. Wildlings seldom venture past the Wolfswood," Luwin mused. "Yet times change." Jon paced. "We will ride north to meet them. A small, swift force." He refused to see fear on Catelyn's face. Instead he saw concern, rightly earned. 25 riders, he continued. "Ghost and Hullen's fastest hounds. We intercept before they reach settled farms." Catelyn studied him. "Take care not to expose Winterfell. Sir Roderick remains as Castellan in my absence," Jon reassured. Preparations began at once. Jon donned ringmail and boiled leather, strapped Longclaw. Lord Commander Mormont's gift he had never received, yet father presented him last moon as token of trust. Valyrian steel shimmered like smoke. He felt its hum when he girded it. Ghost whined low, eager. They rode out by torchlight, streaming into the Wolfswood. Snow cloaked the forest floor, muffling hoofbeats. Jon led, senses alert, hounds ranging ahead. 2 days they pressed north, making camp beneath spruce boughs, wolfish howls threading the dark. He slept light, eyes on shifting shadows, Longclaw near. On dawn of the 3rd day they found tracks, bare feet, many fleeing southeast. The hounds caught scent and bayed. Jon signaled silence. He dismounted and crept ahead, Ghost at heel. Through a tangle of deadfall he spied them. A ragged band. Women, children, old men, clutching sticks. Their faces were gray with hunger. Compassion warred with caution. Jon sheathed sword, stepping into view. The wildlings froze. A woman drew a crude knife. "Stay back, Crow," she spat. "I am not of the watch," Jon replied, lifting empty hands. "You crossed into Stark lands." "We flee the dead," croaked an elder. "Walls of ice fall, shadows walk. We seek only life." Jon's breath hitched. Dead things walking. Stories from old Nan. Yet fear in their eyes seemed real enough. He ordered his men to lower weapons, offered bread. They devoured it like wolves. He questioned them gently. Small cold hearths beyond the frostfangs, raids by pale giants. Whether truth or fever dream, Jon could not ignore the desperate. He made decision before night fell. The wildlings would accompany them to the Gift's edge, there to petition the Watch for refuge. In return they must disarm. Reluctantly they surrendered blades of bone and rust. 2 riders objected. "Savages murder our folk," said Cerwyn Talltree. "We should hang the lot." Jon faced him. "Stark justice is not bloodlust. We guard the living." Cerwyn bowed stiffly. The column turned south with 20 extra mouths. It slowed them, but Jon refused haste at cost of humanity. Ghosts prowled among the wildlings, white shadow herding them gentle as sheepdog. At Castle Black's shadowed ramparts, Jon hailed the gate. The watchmen above stared in wonder, black cloaks whipping. A grizzled sergeant peered down. "Name yourself." "Jon Stark of Winterfell. I come with free folk seeking safety." "We are no home for them," the sergeant barked. "Then let Lord Commander Mormont tell me so." A tense hour followed. Finally, the bear of a man himself appeared upon the gate. ravens swirling. He studied Jon, recognition dawning. "I expected you in black," he called, voice booming. "Another path open, my lord," Jon replied. Mormont ordered the gates swung wide. Within the yard, Jon explained the wildling's plight. Mormont listened, eyes glittering. "The realm has enough foes without starving grannies among them," he conceded at last. "We'll take them under our protection, such as it is." Relief eased Jon's shoulders. They lodged the free folk in spare stables, and that night Mormont bid Jon share ale beside a roaring hearth. The old commander eyed him shrewdly. "A Stark abroad carries weight," he said, "and a lord in all but name." He paused. "Yet I sense you yearn still for the wall." Jon considered. Flames licked wood, casting sparks skyward. "I wanted to serve, but I must serve Winterfell first." "And serve you do," Mormont agreed. "Hold fast to duty, whatever stone you stand upon." At dawn they parted, Oathkeeper and Oathbroken, both steady in their choices. Jon led his riders home, heart split by twin loyalties. One forged in ice, one in blood reclaimed. Winterfell welcomed them with banners flapping and children shouting. Jon dismounted beneath the arch, snow dusting his shoulders. Catelyn awaited on the steps, Bran beside her. She scanned him, searching for injury perhaps, or for some new reason to doubt. Finding neither, she inclined her head. "You returned swift." "The threat was not swords," he said simply. "Only frightened folk." She studied him a moment longer. "That too can prick." Yet her words carried something warmer than frost. He realized then she had worried, as mothers do. And her worry softened the edge she'd honed against him for years. Inside, word spread of his mercy. Some muttered, calling it weakness. Others praised Stark honor revived. Jon let talk swirl, choosing action over argument. He inspected ramparts, oversaw barley harvest, mediated feud between miller and fisherman. Through each task, the chain held. Letters from Ned came sparingly. Small counsel this, royal hunt, that whispers of lions sharpening claws. From Sansa arrived descriptions of lemon cakes and gilded courtiers. Jon read them by firelight, mind-painting scenes of glittering treachery. One parchment bore his father's last words before ink ran thin: "Trust none but those whose hearts you have weighed yourself. Winter is nearer than the king's suspects." The chill of those lines settled over Jon long after flames died. As first snows fell in earnest, a direwolf's howl split the night. Jon woke, heart thundering. Ghost stood rigid at the window, fur bristling. Beyond, the sky churned with green fire, an aurora twisting across stars. Jon had seen such lights only once. Dim on the wall's horizon, now they writhed overhead like serpents of cold flame. A knock rattled his door. Bran burst in, eyes wide. "The sky," he breathed. "Is it magic?" Jon wrapped Bran in his cloak and led him to the covered walk. Servants clustered, pointing upward. Even Catelyn watched, lips parted. "Old Nan said the lights come before great change," Bran whispered. Jon squeezed his shoulder. "Or perhaps they come because we need wonder." Yet dread gnawed. Change indeed loomed. Rumors of Lannister marches, of riverlands burning, of Eddard Stark surrounded by golden lions. The next raven bore broken wax, sealed in haste. Catelyn read first, face draining. She handed it to Jon. Words blurred, but one phrase seared his mind. "Lord Eddard imprisoned by command of King Joffrey. Charged with treason." Silence engulfed the solar. Jon's knees threatened to buckle, but he caught himself on a table edge. Bran began to cry. Arya bolted from the room, fists clenched. Catelyn stood rigid as ice. Only Maester Luwin spoke, voice brittle. "We must decide our course." Jon felt heat crash beneath his skin, a furnace stoked by grief and fury. He forced breath. Decision sprouted. Swift, inevitable. "We call the banners," he said. His voice, though low, rang like steel. Catelyn turned toward him slowly. Her eyes, so long cool, now burned with the same fire. She gave a single nod. "We will." And so Winterfell stirred to war. But that tale must wait. For Jon's journey from bastard boy to Lord of Winterfell had only just begun, and the snows of fate were still gathering in the passes beyond the wall. N.K. PGSQL. The ravencoats clacked through the dark hours, black wings beating against iron bars while the moon rode low above the ramparts. Jon paced the length of the solar, fingers drum-tapping against his sword belt. Scrolls lay across the table like discarded skins. Seals cracked, notes appended, every line a plea, a promise, or a threat. Maester Luwin bent over one by candlelight, translating terse runes from the Skagosi clans. Catelyn sat stiff-backed before the hearth, flame glow brushing the silver in her auburn hair. Outside, the winter wind moaned along the stone like a wounded direwolf. "Lord Karstark will ride within the fortnight," Luwin murmured at last, adjusting his spectacles. "He brings 1,200 spears and 200 horse." "Fewer than he promised, father," Jon said. "His harvest failed beneath early frost," Luwin explained. "Livestock were lost crossing the last river. He marches nonetheless." "Nem to mentor or on him sort." Jon's gaze held the candle flame a moment, then slid to the next parchment. "Deepwood Mott. Lady Glover musters every man fit to lift an axe." Catelyn's voice was low, but steadier than in the hours after the raven from King's Landing. She had taken grief and hammered it into purpose, as the smith beats red iron into form. "Their road is long. Early snow clogs the wolf's way. 3 weeks at least." Jon nodded. "The Glovers will fight when they arrive." The knowledge offered faint comfort. Luwin cleared his throat. "There is the Dreadfort." Flame popped, spitting sap. Jon felt the hush thicken. Roose Bolton's seal, flayed man pale upon pink, lay unopened beneath the others, wax intact. Jon had set it aside thrice now. Bolton's men were hard, chafed with old slights. The Lord himself wrote in a precise hand, courteous to a fault, saying only that he would observe and advise. Nothing more certain. "Hay tests us," Catelyn said. "Bolton rides for Bolton alone. Yet ride he must," Jon answered. "The North stands or falls together." He broke the seal. The parchment smelled faintly of myrrh. Roose Bolton pledged 3,000 men, 1/3 mounted. He offered them at Jon's command, provided Winterfell required the cost of their provisioning. Provided. Jon passed the letter to Catelyn, her mouth pressed thin. "He weighs you, as he once weighed Robb." "We will pay the cost," Jon decided. "But he will feed his own levy until shivering sea freezes. Tell him so." He turned to Luwin. "And send ravens to the clans of the Mountains of the Moon, not Nori, Little. Promise fair passage through Wintertown, 1 goat per 20 men. Salt enough for keeps they leave behind. We need their spears." "Nain." "A bold request," Luwin said. "The clans heed few south of their own ridges." "They heeded Robb," Jon reminded. "They will heed Winterfell's need." The maester bowed and shuffled out. Parchment gathered. Jon sank into a chair opposite Catelyn. The first stillness he had allowed himself since dawn. Her eyes, pale blue and watchful, traveled the length of him as though seeing the boy beneath the Lord's cloak. For a long moment neither spoke. "You bear this burden well," she said finally. Jon managed a tight breath. "I bear it because I must. Robb has gone south to war. Father in chains, Sansa hostage, and Arya missing. The children left are yours and mine alike now." "Dan." Something softened in her face. Swift and small. "I did not always see it so," she whispered. "Yet each night I kneel before the heart tree and ask the gods to guard my babes. You among them." He looked away, throat thick. Ghost nudged through the doors then, red eyes aglow, and crossed to lay his head against Jon's knee. The direwolf's presence eased the silence. Catelyn reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand in the direwolf's fur. Ghost permitted the touch. Still and quiet as snowfall. At first light, Jon stood on the battlements above the outer gatehouse, watching breath plume in the air while ravens rose like soot from the rookery tower. Warriors gathered below, Sworn swords of Winterfell, men of the Greenfork, umbers in shaggy bearskin mantles, life bursting ragged into the courtyard. Axes clanged on whetstones. Cooks ladled barley slop into wooden bowls. The smell of broth and hammered iron mingled with horse sweat. The castle lived, pulsed, prepared, and its lord watched. Sir Roderick joined him, mail hauberk clinking. "The great John blew in with the dawn," he reported. Mustache rhymed with frost. "He demands words with his little Lord Direwolf." John smiled despite weariness. "Let him through, but mind the ale. Last time he drank the cellar half empty. We learn from mistakes, my lord." Roderick's grin flashed. 2 casks set aside for him, nothing more. Should keep him agreeable. John's laughter clouded white in the wind. "It will not, but will pray." By midday the great hall thrummed with noise. Great Janumber towered above it all. A bellow of a man swathed in gray pelts, one hand clutching a ham hock, the other slapping backs hard enough to jar teeth. When he spied John, his booming voice shook rafters. "Boy lord," he cried. "They tell me the bastard sits Stark's chair now. About bloody time." Some of the assembled flinched, casting wary looks to Catelyn by the dais. She only inclined her head. John stepped forward, cloak swinging. "Lord Umber, Winterfell welcomes you and yours. I see you've met our larders already. Nantunuelo. Your larders weep for mercy." Umber tore a bite from the ham, juice trailing in his beard. "But weep louder for vengeance. Reports of your father's chains reached the last hearth same day as mine. We rode through snow and shadow to smash the lion's jaws." Cheers thundered along the tables. John let it swell a heartbeat before raising his hand. The hall quieted, curiosity sharpening their faces. He spoke clear, words echoing. "Lord Eddard Stark stands accused of treason he did not commit. Our banners fly not for conquest or plunder, but for justice. The North remembers. Yet justice untempered by wisdom is but another blade. We shall not rush headlong south until our harvest is secured. Our pass is held, and word from the Riverlands guides our stride. Robb commands there, and we will join him. But at the hour of our choosing, fully clad for winter's long march. Until then, we sharpen sword and plow alike. The North must feed itself before it may feed war." Murmurs rippled. Approval from seasoned men, impatience from the hot-blooded younger. The great John cocked his shaggy head, studying John across the wreck of his ham. Then he grinned, broad as a broken gate. "A thoughtful wolf. Good. Wolves that think strike clean. You have my swords, lad. And my voice." He lifted the ham like a drinking horn. "To Lord Snow, Lord Stark." A roar met the toast, cups raised. John's cheeks warmed beneath the hall's torches, though he sensed eyes measuring him still. Karstark men with their salt-streaked beards, Bolton riders in muted pink cloaks, Mountain Clan scouts hunched near the doors. Acceptance would be earned stroke by stroke. That afternoon, John convened his captains in the ancient council chamber beneath a map of the North carved in greenstone. Candles ringed the walls. Smoke curled against vaulted roof. Sir Roderick spread fresh scouting reports. Liddles spotted iron-borne longships off Bear Island, gliding through shoals like sharks. A Bolton outrider claimed gray men from the neck, slipping past Moat Cailin. No proof yet, but worry enough. "Pick a dozen sure riders, light and fast," John ordered. "Send them along the King's Road as far south as the Twins. If Frey banners stir, we must know." "Beverson." Hallis Mullen scratched his scarred chin. "Lord Frey sells loyalty dear. We will pay no coin for his ears," John replied. "Only courtesy. The Tully blood in my veins still matters, even beneath snow turned stark. Remind him." My lord." Next, they turned to stores. Oats dwindling faster than mills could grind. Cattle heavy on hay. John authorized slaughter of the weaker beasts. Smokehouses running day and night. Grain wagons rolled out of Winter Town, peasants trudging behind, receiving trampled silver for their labors. Each long day ended the same. Jon standing at the gatehouse, counting wagons, faces, hearts entrusted to his care. He slept little. When he did, dreams came. In one, he walked the crypts, torch sputtering. The Stone King stood row on row, wolves at their feet. Far below, frost laced the air. Ned Stark knelt by a blank slab, gaze sorrowful. Jon reached for him, but stone roots grew around his legs, pinning him, until he woke tangled in sweat-damp blankets, Ghost's muzzle cold against his face. In another he stood atop the wall at night, looking south instead of north. Flames consumed King's Landing, smoke towered like a dragon of ash. Snowflakes drifted onto his cheeks. No, not snow, but falling feathers, white and black together. They melted to blood in his hands. He told none of these, not even Maester Luwin, though dread rode him afterward like some gaunt horse. 10 days after the Greyjohn's arrival, Roose Bolton rode through Winterfell's gates beneath a banner of flayed pink skin on black. His retinue filed silent as graveyard shades, armor lacquered dull. Snow squealed beneath hooves. Jon received him in the yard, Sir Roderick at his side. Bolton dismounted, pale eyes unreadable. "Lord Stark," he said. The title came smooth as stitched silk, yet Jon felt the prickle of cold steel beneath. "Lord Bolton, Winterfell thanks you for your support. Duty, not kindness, brings me." Bolton's gaze flicked to the castle walls, measuring. "My house stands with the Starks until ice claims us all." "Until," Jon heard. He bowed fractionally. "You and your men are quartered in the East Barracks. The smith will see to any repairs." "Our steel is kept sharp at home," Bolton murmured. He offered no smile, only a tilt of his head that might pass for deference. When servants led him away, Jon released a breath. "Strange folk," Roderick muttered. "I'd sooner trust a bear not to bite." "Bears we know how to fight," Jon said. "Bolton wears masks over masks." That dusk Jon walked alone to the Godswood, needing the hush of the heart tree. Snow powdered the branches now. The pool beneath the weirwood lay rimmed in ice, reflecting branches like white claws. He knelt, breath trembling in the still air. The red face watched, sap tears frozen on bark. "Father," he whispered, "if ever your spirit lingers where roots drink deep, guide me. I seek to hold what you entrusted, yet every stone seems to shift beneath my feet. War comes like winter tide, and I fear I will drown our people by some miscourse I cannot yet name." Wind sighed through leaves that were not. Season bared. No answer but silence, a silence that seemed to hold its breath. Ghost stood sentinel, nose lifting, then turned his head toward the outer dark. Jon followed his gaze. Beyond the Godswood wall, the sky smoldered orange, where the sun had set. In that fading light, for a heartbeat, he thought he saw a white shape moving between the trees, half man, half mist. His hand flew to Longclaw, but the vision was gone, trick of dusk and worry. Days marched. Messengers galloped and coated with frost. Talhart men had reclaimed Moat Cailin from marsh brigands. Walder Frey sent polite words but no oath. Ravens from the Eyrie fell silent behind Lysa Arryn's closed gates. Ironborn raiders burned Flint's finger watchtower and vanished. Each piece Jon tucked into the puzzle forming in his mind. He drilled daily with the younger squires, partly to keep his edge, partly to show them that a lord might sweat beside common men. The yard rang. Wood on wood, steel on shield, breath steaming. In the evenings, he sat with Bran in the rookery tower, tracing routes on maps. Bran's eyes glittered with hunger for knowledge. His small hand followed Jones across coastlines, counting leagues. Sometimes Arya joined, restless but eager, soaking tactics as swiftly as she learned footwork from Sirio's old lessons. Catelyn watched from the door on such nights, lips parted as though she meant to speak some word she had not yet chosen. She never did, but her eyes were softer with each passing dusk. Snow deepened. Winter swelled as small folk abandoned farmsteads for the security of walls and warmth. Fires spotted the hillside like embers cast from heaven. Jon ordered bales of woolen cloth distributed, and barrels of fish salted through the night. Rumors blew in colder than the wind. Wolves the size of horses ranging the King's Road. Comets red as blood drawn across the dawn. King Robert fallen to a boar's tusk, and a boy of 12 upon the Iron Throne. These last came confirmed by sealed missive. Joffrey Baratheon crowned. Ned Stark still held. Jon crushed the parchment in his fist. "Robb must know," he said through gritted teeth. "We ride soon. The banners will not wait the spring." Catelyn answered with a nod sharp as spears. "Then we ride." Councils followed. Strategy hammered beneath torchlight. The western road lay iced but passable. Moat Cailin guarded the neck. The Frey's twins spanned the Green Fork. Jon proposed a 3-column advance. Karstarks through the eastern foothills to shadow Bolton's host. Glovers along the coast to Harry's supply lines. Umber's and Winterfell's corps at center. Fast march to the Twins. If the Southron lords intended siege of River Run, their supply wagons would bleed before they ever crossed the Trident. Bold, Hallis Mullen mused. And risky if we outrun our own grain. Hence the coastal column, Jon countered. Glover ships can sail inland waterways with provisions. We fight like wolves, never alone, always circling. Roderick's gnarled finger tapped the map. 20,000 men is no small pack. Circle too wide and claws find only empty air. Then tighten at River Run, Jon said. Unleash at Harrenhal if the lion withdraws. The captains debated long into night. But come dawn they emerged with purpose. Ravens took flight, calling banners to march. Horns sounded in courtyards. Grooms saddled destroyers. Smiths hammered rivets glowing white. Beneath the pale northern sun, row on row of spears rose like a frozen forest. 3 days before the host set forth, word came from Castle Black. A single piece of parchment stitched hastily to a raven's leg. Lord Commander Mormont wrote of rangers lost beyond the Milkwater and talk of dead men walking. He urged vigilance, begging the Stark and Winterfell to remember the wall's plight, even while war brewed below. The raven arrived at dawn. By dusk Jon had penned reply. Oaths of aid, though his swords marched south, and a promise of grain come spring thaw. He sealed it with wax, pressed the direwolf stamp deep, and watched Luwin loose the bird into the gray evening sky. Ghost stared after until it vanished, then whined low. The eve of departure fell as cold as a corpse. Jon walked the battlements where once he had played at being Night's Watch. Fires glimmered below, torches bobbing like sparks upon a black sea. He leaned on the crenelle, letting frost bite his lips. Snowflakes drifted lazy. In the silent dark, he felt the weight of every man sleeping inside those walls. Every woman, every child. 5 hours hence he would lead half their strength away, leaving Winterfell in the hands of Sir Roderick and a garrison too thin for his liking. Yet justice called. Footsteps approached muffled. He turned to find Catelyn again. She wore a heavy mantle, hair braided tight. Her eyes searched him. "You carry the North on your shoulders," she said. "It is where it belongs." She shook her head once. "It belongs to all of us. Share the burden or it will crush you." He looked out over the snowy fields. "I'm afraid if I share it, others will falter. Father, Robb, they should be here." "Neither. They are," she said, placing her gloved hand upon his arm. "In you, and in the hearts of the men who ride because you showed them a Stark still stands unbroken." The words settled between them like fresh snow, gentle, irrevocable. He covered her hand with his. In that moment, all the old chasms between them seemed bridged. If only by a narrow plank, fragile but real. "Keep Bran safe," he whispered. "I will. Ride swift, Jon. And if you pass by River Run," her voice thickened, "tell my brother I stand with him." He squeezed her hand, then let go. She descended the stair, leaving him to the hush of falling snow and the distant beat of drums. When dawn bled gray across the sky, Winterfell's gates yawned wide. The northern host streamed forth, direwolf banners snapping, horns crying beneath clouded breath. The great Jon led the vanguard, voice booming songs older than kingdoms. Karstark outriders shadowed flanks like lean greyhounds. Glover axes glinted behind trotting pack mule. At their heart rode Jon, cloak furled, Ghost pacing at heel. Longclaw hung at his hip, its bare pelt pommel cold against leather glove. High atop the curtain wall, Bran and Rickon waved. Arya balanced on one toe beside them, eyes bright and fierce. Jon lifted his gauntlet in salute. And then he was riding south, hooves churning fresh snow, Winterfell dwindling behind. Each mile carried him further from the boy who had once dreamed of black cloaks and brothers sworn. Ahead lay crossroads stained with old blood, keeps burnt and broken. Golden lions crouched behind red walls. But the Direwolf ran now, and none could gainsay its hunger. The host made 10 miles the first morn, camping beneath the shadow of the Wolfswood that night. Fires dotted the clearing, ravens circled the smoke. Jon walked among the tents, trading words with sentries, seeing to wounded horses, sharing hot wine with men who half feared him, half adored him. He spoke little of strategy. Instead he asked of families, of homes left untended. They answered, surprised, and their faces lit. Around midnight he sought his own tent, but sleep fled him. He slipped beyond the encampment into the trees, Ghost silent at his flank. Snow muffled his steps. He went until the campfires were embers through branches, then sat upon a moss-slick stone. The sky was clear, stars scattered like shards of ice. A hush held the wood, deep as prayer. "I thought you would come." Jon spun, hand finding Longclaw's grip. A tall figure stepped from the birch shadows, slender of build, cloaked in mottled grays, face all angles. "Andy?" "No, don't." The hood fell back. "Theon." The name left Jon in a cloud of frost. He had not seen his foster brother since Robb marched. Theon Greyjoy looked leaner, eyes glittering seawater green. He carried a short bow unstrung. "A poor reunion this. I had meant to reach Winterfell." Theon's smile was thin. "Your ravens fly faster than my horse. What business brings you here?" "Robb sends word," Theon said. "He breaks camp at River Run within 2 moons' turn, striking east to confront the Kingslayer. He begs the North ride hard." Jon studied him. "You rode a fortnight through snow to tell me what a raven could have." "Could have, and would have been read by Cersei's whisperers before it ever crossed the net." Theon's shrug was casual, but tension fluttered under it. "Also, I bear tidings from Pike. My father builds ships, too many ships." Jon's blood cooled. "For what purpose?" "The one he knows best," Theon said grimly. "Rebellion, while great lords stare south." "And you warn me?" Jon's jaw tightened. Greyjoy blood warned Stark. "I warn Robb." Theon's laugh was short. "And I warn you because—" "7 blast it. I swore brotherhood once, and I'll not see our home burned while lions and krakens gamble over kingdom's bones." Jon considered the man before him, the boy he'd hunted with, quarreled with, trusted. Theon's smirk hid desperation. Perhaps loyalty too. Ghost padded forward, sniffed Theon's hand. The Ironborn lad froze, but did not flinch. The direwolf withdrew. "You'll ride with us," Jon said finally. "But betray my trust, and I'll feed you to him piece by piece." Theon managed a crooked grin. "We'll share a cup on it." "A cup," Jon agreed, though unease curled in his gut. They returned to camp. Theon sworn under Jon's banner, tongues wagging before dawn. Karstarks watched him with flat eyes. Boltons whispered. Yet Theon rode, and the host pushed on. South of the White Knife, the land unfurled wide and raw, covered in hoarfrost. They passed abandoned crofts, fields of stubble slick with ice. Tracks of Ironborn raid parties scarred the snow, but no sails dotted the coast. Glover outriders scouted shorelines. Crows fed on charred timbers of fishing skiffs. It was near the ruins of Ram's Head village that winter finally bared fangs. Clouds gathered purple as bruises. Snow began to fall, gentle at first, then thick curtains that smothered all sound. The column slowed to a crawl, horses snorting steam. Visibility shrank to yards. Whispers spread. Some cursed the old gods, some prayed. Jon rode at the fore, snow blanketing his mantle until he seemed carved of marble. On the 3rd day of storm they made camp at a rise above frozen tarns. Tents sagged beneath weight. Men huddled 3 to a cloak. Jon convened captains in his canvas pavilion, breath frosting in lamplight. Supplies measured thin. Grain for 9 days, oats for 5. Umbers had lost 2 carts in ice-swollen ford. If the storm held, they would starve before the twins. We backtracked to Torrens Square, Hallis urged. Resupply, await thaw. And SETI initiative. Karstark's lieutenant barked. By the time rivers melt, lions will feast on River Run's bones. Voices clashed. Jon listened, knuckles white on Longclaw's pommel. At last he rose. The tent quieted. We march at dawn, he said. Storm or no. Each man carries half rations. We hunt along the way. Hares, elk, whatever fills the pot. Lord Glover's ships resupply us at Maidenpool once we break the neck. Until then we endure. Great Jon slapped the table. Endure. A fine northern word. But if men fall ill, Roderick cautioned. We bury them with honor, Jon answered gravely. But we do not stop. So it was decided. Dawn revealed a world buried in white. Snowdrifts, swallowed hedges, blanketed ruins. They trudged south, axes clearing paths through ice-bowed branches. Each step tore muscle, but they did not break. Hounds flushed game. Hunters loosed arrows. Thin stews simmered nights. Jon walked among encampments sharing strips of smoked beef, praising grit, binding frost-bitten toes. He gave his own cloak to a boy shivering at sentry post. Next morning a new one waited outside his tent from some anonymous hand. Wordless bonds knit under snow. In that crucible, Theon found a measure of grudging respect. He scouted ravines for passable trails, led hunters to deer. One bitter evening he sat by Jon's fire, hands out to warmth. My sister says fathers are made of storms, Theon muttered. Blow enough wind, something breaks. Jon looked at embers. And what of sons? We're meant to steer the ship through, maybe. Or maybe we're the first to drown. Silence thickened between them. Snow hissed as flakes met flame, died to steam. Jon understood then that Theon lived beneath shadows deeper than any snow squall. If the Kraken turns north, Winterfell stands ready, Jon said. Then pray he never does. Theon's lips twisted. He rose and strode into darkness. At last, 3 weeks passed departing Winterfell. The storm broke. Sky blazed blue. Sun a cold coin above glittering plains. Spirits soared. Horns sounded. They made fresh time south, skirts of Crofter's village, forded the White Knife where ice thawed just enough for boats. There, ravens waited at a lonely tower. Letters in Robb's own hand. River Run yet held. Jaime Lannister marched east, Tywin west. Robb needed the north at the twins within a moon's turn. Jon spread the map across his saddle, studying. Their pace would make it, barely. But only if Moat Cailin stayed open. Scouts sent ahead, slipped through marsh paths, silent as eels. The host pressed on. Nights shortened, though winter still clung. Singers composed verses of Snowwolf leading south, voices rising round fires. Jon listened, cheeks burning. Leadership sat heavy, yet hearing his men chant gave him strength. The next swamps exhaled fetid breath as they passed, reeds rattling. Greywater Watch remained unseen, but reed warriors padded ghost-silent among the willows, watching. One night, a Crannogman stepped into Jon's tent without warning, smear of mud across his cheeks. I bring the frog speaker's greeting, he said. High, piping voice, and laid frog skin pouch on the table. Inside, a bundle of arrow shafts fletched with pale heron feathers. The gift of our king to yours. Arrows dipped in poison of the silent marsh. One nick kills strong men in a blink. Tell your lord my thanks, Jon said, unsettled. The Crannogman melted into reeds. Poison arrows. Such weapons shamed knights who fought in open field. Yet war cared nothing for shame. They reached Moat Cailin at dusk. 3 black towers rose from bog like broken teeth. Walls crusted in green slime. Talhart men held the ruin, orange firelight flickering in arrow slits. Their captain greeted Jon atop ancient basalt rampart, reporting no sign of Lannister banners. Marsh fever grips them, but they stood. Jon left Umber's spearmen to reinforce while main host trudged on. At Greywater's edge, his outriders returned bearing frantic news. Frey scouts camped north of the Twins, uncertain where their allegiance bent. Jon ordered a forced march, drums beating through night, host straining across frost-ridged meadows. On the 50th dawn since leaving Winterfell, the Northern Army crested a rise overlooking the azure ribbon of the Green Fork. There stood the Twins, two massive keeps straddling river, linked by covered bridge. Frey banners hung limp in still air, blue field, twin towers black. No Lannister sigil flew beside, yet neither did the Trout of Tully. Grey ambiguity fluttered. Jon called halt. He rode forward with a small guard. Sir Roderick, Theon, Maester Luwin, Greatjon, chosen for counsel and strength. They approached the western gatehouse under Direwolf banner. Crossbowmen peered from murder holes, chains rattled. Presently, a sallyport groaned open. Out stepped Sir Stevron Frey, thin shoulders, pointed beard. Lord Stark. Stevron greeted cautiously, eyeing Jon's cloak. We had expected young Robb. You have me in his stead, Jon answered. My father yet lives, though clapped in irons. We march to free him. The Twins stand between us and that duty. Tolls must be paid. Stevron said, though his voice wavered. Custom dictates. Custom shifts with times, Jon cut he. When winter howls, a closed gate becomes a grave. Open your bridge, and Frey name shall sing proud in every mead hall north of the neck. No persedi. And should I refuse? Jon leaned in, voice low as growl. Then remember the part of the song where gravestones crack beneath spring floods. Choose. Stevron swallowed. Behind arrow loops, crossbows tilted. Long moments stretched. At last, Stevron inclined his head. My father will see you in the bridge hall. That parley lasted hours. Walder Frey, old and shrunken, sat bundled in furs, while his grandsons whispered lists of demands. Marriage alliances, wards, sides of beef, and barrels of honeymead. Jon conceded small things, denied large. In the end, they settled. Arya would marry Waldron Frey when both came of age, if Arya lived, if Winterfell agreed. Hostages exchanged, modest toll in silver. Not cheap, but benign compared with Frey's opening ransom. At dawn, gates yawned, bridge lowered. The northern host poured across the Twins, sounds of hooves echoing under vaulting timbers. Jon rode at their head, ghost pacing silent. Southland rolled wide, dotted with wind-stunted oaks. Somewhere beyond those distant hills, lions prowled. He found himself thinking of Ned then. Of the quiet trust in his father's eyes the day he rode Solder south. Whatever chains bound him now, Jon would break them. The promise beat in his chest like second heart. As they marched, banners snapping, Jon breathed the raw cold. 5 hours of sunrise slid across steel helms and mail. The War of Wolves had begun, and he meant to see it ended in stark gray, not Lannister gold. Far behind, Winterfell's chimneys trailed smoke against the northern sky. A memory fading, but never gone. And within that memory, a snow-dusted boy once stared south from battlements dreaming of black cloaks. Now a lord rode, cloak wolf clasped, to make those dreams small beneath the weight of justice and winter and the unbroken north. N.K. PGSQL. The drums fell silent at sunset, fading into the hush of wool-colored sky as the northern host settled their sprawling encampment on the southern bank of the Green Fork. Cookfires flared and guttered among a sea of hide tents, their smoke mingling with river mist, until the whole plain seemed one vast, low-roiling cauldron. Jon walked the outer ring of pickets in the failing light, cloak pulled tight against the damp. Each sentry he passed straightened, nodding or murmuring a greeting, "My lord," or simply, "Snow Wolf," the new name that trailed him like a breath in frost. Near the rearguard lines he found Theon Greyjoy oiling a yew-limb bow beneath a sputtering torch. The Ironborn's green eyes reflected the flame's jitter. His smile was sharp as a snapped spar. "You chase the shadows early," Theon drawled, not looking up. "Expect Lannisters to crawl out of the water? I trust nothing that whispers in mist." Jon answered. Scouts say Jaime Lannister rides hard for Harrenhal, men 15,000 strong. Theon's brows rose. Half the country to crush River Run and snare your brother all at once. Bold move. Foolish too if he leaves King's Landing bare. The lion's pride lets him see only what he wants. Pride can blind. Jon stared across water where the twins' torches glimmered like lost stars. But blindness does not dull his sword. Theon slung the bow across his shoulder, rising. Then we'd best keep eyes wide. Speaking of, Bolton's men barricade themselves near the wagons, stripping spear shafts for firewood again. Say Winterfell's quartermasters shorted them kindling. Jon's jaw tightened. I'll see to it. He moved off into the maze of tents, boots sucking at river-soft ground. Torches bobbed ahead, outlining the pale flayed man banners. Roose Bolton's command tent stood dead center, candles glowing through doeskin walls. Jon found 2 Bolton guards warming hands before a brazier full of wagon planks. Shavings flitted up the chimney of sparks like tiny burning moths. Fresh ash carpeted the frost. This wood was meant for carts, Jon said. You'll carve none without wheels. One guard lifted a shoulder. Cold kills faster than carts roll. Lord Bolton's orders. Jon's temper prickled, but he kept voice low. Stack what you've taken and haul it back. We share fuel, or the next blaze will be your captain's temper. We follow Bolton's temper, the second man muttered. And Bolton follows mine while these banners ride beneath the direwolf, Jon replied. He waited until they doused the flames, then turned for the tent. Inside, candlelight washed the walls. Roose Bolton knelt before a low table, rolling up a parchment map with slow, deliberate fingers. His hood lay back, exposing pale, unblinking eyes. Jon halted at the threshold. Bolton looked up as though he had scented him. Lord Stark. The voice was smooth cream over steel. I thought you upon the night watch. I walked to know my camp, Jon said. Your men burn supply wood. Bolton's thin lips pursed. Cold fingers fumble spears. Corpses will not pull wagons either. Man. Break the wagons and no food reaches us at the Trident. Jon countered. Share our stores. I've ordered the quartermaster to allocate peat bricks to each company. Bolton studied him a moment. Efficient. But warmth breeds complacency. Men should remember winter, lest they forget why they march. They remember with every breath. Jon stepped deeper. Tomorrow we strike camp at dawn. Your outriders guard our eastern flank. Have them within horn reach. As you command. The words were obedient. The eyes were knives sliding beneath cloth. Jon inclined his head and left. Outside, the wind carried the faint, distant creak of river ice shifting under the bridge's pilings. A warning in the dark. He found sleep fitful. Dreams spilled. White wolves racing through red-leafed woods. Ned's voice calling his name across an endless field of snow. And were gone by dawn's uncertain glow. Trumpets sounded. Cooks doused fires. The host formed columns. Jon buckled the Longclaw, mounted his dappled gray, and rode to the fore where the Greyjohn and Karstar captains waited. Eastward they pushed, following the Green Fork toward its confluence with the Tumblestone. Frost-silvered grass gave way to churned earth where armies had moved before them. Broken spear points, a dented helm. Carrion crows flapping at a tangle of mail and bone half sunk in mud. Ghost paced ahead, fur whiter than the rime-coating reeds. Twice he halted, hackles lifting, before strangers' tracks, narrow as a child's toe, yet deep with weight. Trackers muttered of mountain clans in Lannister service or sellsword scouts. Each time Jon doubled the outrider screen. On the 6th day, a scout thundered back, face streaked with cold sweat. South Ridge, he gasped. Smoke for miles, my lord. Half the horizon red. Jon and his captains spurred upslope. Atop the stony breast of a hill they saw it. The riverlands burning. Villages smoldered in ugly black wreaths. Manor steads flickered like dying torches. A column of Lannister horse, crimson cloaks bright as fresh blood, rode under banners of roaring gold. Their outriders harried a ragged train of small folk herded before pikes. Jon swallowed fury. Numbers? 300 at best, said the scout. But swift. The great John's beard bristled. A dog's hunt. Let's end it. Hold, John ordered. Calculation spun. Own strength, ground, civilians. The ridge dropped to marshy flats. A creek meandered like glass beneath thin ice. We cannot risk full column bogged. I want 200 light horse, Umbers and Karstarks both. We'll strike their rear, cut them from the captives. Archers on the slope to pin. At his word, riders assembled. Shaggy mountain stallions beside rangy chestnuts. Leather lamellar creaking. Theon Greyjoy fell in beside John, grin feral as sea spray. First blood south of the neck. I intend to taste it. Taste victory, not slaughter, John warned. They charged at midday, hooves pounding crusted earth. John led, cloak snapping. Ghost racing a phantom path through dead weeds below. At 2 furlongs, the Lannister rear guard wheeled. Too late. Northern arrows hissed downhill, peppering flank and tail. John's spear punched through a crimson cloak, unhorsing a sergeant whose eyes widened in mortal surprise. Theon loosed arrow after arrow, each finding a gap in gleaming gilt. Panic rippled the column. Captives scattered, shrieking. John drove ahead, Longclaw flashing Valyrian smoke as he carved a gap through tangled riders. A standard-bearer lunged. John pivoted, hamstringing the man's horse. The beast screamed and toppled. Ghost barreled in, crimson teeth tearing. In heartbeats, the skirmish tipped. Surrounded by swampy ground, Lannister riders found wheels mired, horses stumbling. Northern axes rose and fell. John pressed for surrender, voice hoarse. Yield and live. Some flung weapons, others fought desperate. By sunhigh, it was done. 24 prisoners knelt, wrists bound. Twice that lay dead or dying amid red-streaked snow. John rode the field in silence, counting losses. 7 northern lives and a score wounded. He knelt beside a Karstark lad coughing blood, pressed hand to chest until life drifted out on a shuddering breath. He murmured the words of the old gods, a prayer half-remembered from Maester Luwin, and rose with blood on gloves. The captives, the small folk, huddled near a burnt wagon, mothers clutching children, old men with empty eyes. John dismounted. You are safe, he told them. We march for River Run. Food will be shared. Our maester tends the hurt. Some gaped, disbelieving. One woman broke and sobbed at his boots. That night, the camp swelled with new mouths. Bolton's quartermaster balked at extra grain until John cut half his own larder to prove the point. In firelight, he stitched the wounded with Maester Luwin, fingers clumsy yet steady. When the last gash was bound, he sat back, knuckles aching, to find Arya's little wooden practice sword, lost at Winterfell, wedged among the medical satchels. Catelyn must have tucked it there. Silent benediction for both her children. He weighed it in his palm, splintered now, but smooth from countless drills. Memory pressed into grain. He slid it beneath his jerkin. 2 dawns later, they reached the whispering willows of the Red Fork. Scouts galloped in bearing dire news. Jaime Lannister's van had shattered Lord Edmure's screening force at the Battle of the Fords. River Run was encircled, though not yet besieged in earnest. Worse, Tywin's army had broken camp at Harrenhal, marching north along the King's Road with twice the numbers first rumor. Between Lions and Anvil lay the Riverlord heartlands, and Robb Stark somewhere inside that forge, steel flashing hotter by the hour. John studied a rough charcoal map by firelight. Theon and Hallis, and the Greatjon flanking. Paths converged like veins toward River Run. 3 river crossings remained. The Stone Mill, the Ruby Ford, and Pretty Pink Maiden's arched limestone bridge. Control any 2 and an army became a hammer. Lose them, and it dissolved like thawed snow. Robb sits behind Jaime now, John said quietly. If he crosses the western Trident, he might fall upon Lannister rear while Tywin marches from east, but only if we draw Tywin away. We? Theon arched a brow. You'd bait the old lion? With all we can muster, John answered. Tywin cares nothing for broken farms, only victories worth a song. We ride directly for Harrenhal. Torch his supply train. threaten the den of Heron itself. He'll turn or risk losing his seat of dread. The Great John slammed a fist on the table, rattling cups. Now there's teeth. Harass, scorch, howl in his ears. Wolves in shadow. Hallis Mullen rub beard. And if he does not turn, we dangle spears before a stone bull. Harrenhal's walls could swallow 10,000 men entire. We strike like ghosts, John said. We do not breach, only bleed them. He looked to Theon. Ironborn raiders know harrying. Can you guide boats up the Red Fork, burn barges, drag chains across current? A grin glimmered. With pleasure. Give me 100 men and riverboats. I'll make a pyre a mile long. They planned deep into night. Roose Bolton, sked over risks yet offered 20 skirmishers trained in silent movement. Karstark's heir insisted on joining the vanguard. Jon accepted counsel, weighed and measured until dawn. The hosts split next day. Heavy foot, baggage trains, and wounded trickled west with Sir Roderick toward Seagard to reinforce Tully coastlands. Jon led 8,000 picked horse and lightfoot south by muddy lanes. Moving swift as gossip, banners furled till dusk. Ghost ranged ahead, white blur among cattails. Days blurred. Skirmishes with sellsword outriders, burned wagons, rumors of Tywin's fury. They seized a lion convoy near Fairmarket. Silk, iron, barrels of Dornish red. Jon ordered the wine poured out. The silk given to small folk clad only in rags. At every hamlet they left sacks of turnips, patched roofs as they passed. Word flew, Snowwolf host, that fights lions yet feeds peasants. When they reached the banks across from deserted Harrentown, riverfolk met them with bread and crude spears, eager to guide. By moon's grace they struck. Theon's boats glided under fog, torches soaked in pitch-spitting light only when flung into Tywin's anchored barges. Wood roared, black smoke clawed the stars. Chains spanned the current, snagging fresh craft tumbling downstream. Bolton's shadows crept along River Lane, slitting throats of sentries who stumbled from their tents, red eyes stung by smoke. Jon watched from ash-drifted hillside, heart hammering. Flames danced in his pupils. Then horns moaned within Harrenhal's shattered towers, deep and dire. Tywin's standard, lion on crimson, rose above Southwest Gatehouse at dawn. By noon, gold armor poured across drawbridge, pikes bristling. The lion had indeed turned. Retreat began at once. Jon's host scattered into marshy woods north and east, moving in wolf packs, snapping at the lion's ankles. Supply wagons overturned and torched, every horse line cut before dawn. Tywin cursed shadows and pressed his heavy columns north, away from Riverrun, chasing phantoms. For 8 days the game played. Jon struck, melted, struck again. Snowstorms thickened, drifts knee-deep. Still they harried. Bolton's men excelled, too well, cutting prisoners' tongues lest they warn. Jon confronted Roose, one bitter twilight, outside a brook-banked hamlet raised by retreating lions. "I will not have torture in this host," Jon said, breath steam. Bolton's pale eyes blinked. "War is torture, my lord. Swift or slow. We fight for honor. Leave the tongues in their mouths. You command." Bolton dipped his head, obedient mask once more. That night, word reached camp. Robb Stark had smashed Jaime Lannister at Whispering Wood, capturing the Kingslayer beneath autumn boughs. Riverrun's siege was lifted. Riverlords rallied. Cheers rose through tents, wild and fierce. The Great John danced a jig atop a pork barrel. Karstark men wept for kin avenged. Jon felt joy stab quick and bright, and fear's shadow close behind. Jaime prisoner meant leverage for Ned, but Tywin's wrath would burn hotter still. He gathered captains. "We break off harassment," he said. "Pull back to Riverrun, link forces with Robb before Tywin regroups." They marched west by night, leaving false trail fires to spin tales of pursuit. Snow turned to rain as they entered fertile lowlands, mud tugging boots. Ghost vanished for hours, returning smeared red, stag or scout, Jon could not know. Near Maidenpool, an emaciated boy in torn orange cloak, stumbled from hedgerow clutching a broken standard. The Fox of Housepiper. He collapsed at Jon's stirrup, gasping of Tywin's outriders pillaging his lord's hold fast. Lady Piper taken east. Jon dismounted, lifted the boy, set him before Luwin. "Heal him first," he said. "Then we ride." He spared no one. Each raised village he passed fed the ember of purpose. 2 evenings later, heralds sighted trout and deer Ewolf banners fluttering beyond a low ridge. Jon rode ahead with 10 companions. Theon, Hallis, Bolton, Greatjon, Karstark's heir, and a banner knight bearing the wolf. Wind whipped their cloaks as they crested hilltop and looked down on Robb Stark's host, encamped beneath red-leafed elms along the Tumblestone. It was larger than Jon remembered. 20,000 strong, tents stretched like a city of moon-silver canvas. Campfires glittered constellations. Trumpets sounded. Riders cantered forth. At their head galloped Grey Wind, grown near as big as a pony, amber eyes fixed on Ghost. The direwolves circled, sniffing, finally touching noses with low rumbled greetings. Behind padded Robb Stark in battered brigandine, auburn hair wind-tossed, features grim yet lit by sudden flame when he saw Jon dismounting. They met halfway, grasping forearms, their handshake cracked mail rings. For an instant neither spoke. Then Robb laughed, raw and fierce, and pulled Jon into an embrace. "Brother, winter has followed you south." Jon clapped his back. "I only tried to keep pace with rumor of the young wolf. Whispering wood, they say. You stole my glory. Now." Plenty laughed. Robb's eyes shone, exhausted, sharpened. "Lord Bolton said you bled Tywin's baggage on the river. I feared he'd swallow you whole." We nipped his heels until he howled. Robb clasped Jon's shoulder and turned him toward camp. "Come. Mother has prayed for this day nightly." They strode together past saluting guards. Tully fish banners rippled, river lords bowed. Jon noted the looks, curiosity, suspicion, hope. In Robb's command tent, Catelyn Stark awaited, rising from a narrow trestle as they entered. Her hands trembled only slightly when she cupped Jon's face. "I sent ravens each dawn," she whispered. "The wings beat me here," Jon said, voice thick. They spoke long into night, Jon recounting Tywin's chase, Robb describing Jaime's capture, Edmure's wounds, Sir Bryndon's defense. Maps rolled and unrolled beneath lamplight. Plans formed. Join their forces, menace Tywin's flank while sending envoys to Storm's End and Dragonstone. South lay Stannis and Renly, banners raised against a boy king. The realm cracked like river ice under sudden thaw. In each fissure, wolves could find purchase or plunge. Outside, the camp hummed with talk of kingship. Jon heard it whispered while passing cooks, saw spearmen nudge one another, gaze brushing him beneath brows. By dawn, the air itself tasted of near-brewed destiny. That morning, the Riverlords gathered in Riverrun's ancient courtyard. Blackwood, Bracken, Frey, Mallister, Piper, scores more, alongside northern chieftains. Jon stood beside Catelyn under the rust-dark ramparts as Robb faced the assembly. He wore no crown, only the weight of expectation. Lord Greatjon stepped forward, voice booming. "They've crowned a stag and a lion, but who will answer the north? Who answers for the river? The king in the north once ruled both, and we remember." He drew his sword, planted it point down. "I don't know about you fine lords, but I'll not kneel to some boy who mended boar's flesh, nor to golden cubs hiding behind queen's skirts. There sits the only blood I'll follow, whelp of Winterfell and Riverrun Boat." He jabbed at Robb. "King." Swords rasped free. One by one lords knelt, banging hilts to stone. "King in the north," voices rolled like thunder. The king in the north. Jon felt it shake marrow. Grey Wind howled, Ghost answering. Yet a strange chill rippled beneath his pride, for with every voice raised to Robb, Jon's own burden grew heavier. If Robb was to be crowned king, Winterfell's throne now lay wholly in Jon's charge, its defense against kraken, lion, or walking dead. That night, in the quiet of the God's Hall, Robb knelt before the weirwood-carved throne of Riverrun. Catelyn placed a bronze circlet wrought with dire wolves upon his hair. Jon watched from the shadows, heart a tumult of love and foreboding. When the acclamation ended and torches guttered low, Robb came to him in the echoing corridor. "I need you beside me, Jon," he said. "You wield men like a smith wields iron. Help me forge this kingdom." Jon's answer hovered. He yearned to march as shield brother. Yet Winterfell's children, the little wolves called, Bran with eyes bright over new-made maps, Rickon still tangled in infancy's dreams, Arya swift as wind and lost somewhere between, and Ned, chains slithered in the dark beyond Red Keep walls. "My duty is north," Jon said at length, each word a weight set down. "I must guard the hearth while you guard the hunt." Robb studied him. Slow nod. "Then send me your counsel in raven's wings. When winter passes, I'll build you a stone so high at Winterfell we'll see each other clear to pike." Jon smiled. "Save the stone for graves of kings we bury." They clasped wrists, brothers in truth if not blood, and parted with dawn's chill sighing through arrow slits. Days followed where council met council, forging war's next beats. Lord Bolton pressed to flay captive lions for terror. Jon opposed until Robb forbade the practice, though not entirely. Bolton's smirk promised secrets unwitnessed. Frey envoys slithered, reminding oaths. Raven wings carried word. King Joffrey demanded Ned's head. Stannis named himself rightful heir. Aaronlee raised a rainbow host. Somewhere across foaming sea, twin-tailed comets were said to blaze like red swords. Ominous tidings for an already fractured realm. On a rain-thick dawn, Jon prepared to ride north, a column of 2,000 escorts, and river refugees in tow. Theon packed saddlebags, jingling with plundered lion coins, spoils for new forges. Maester Luwin fussed over medical wagons. Catelyn embraced Jon by the gatehouse, tears unshed. "Tell Bran he is my brave lord," she whispered, "and watch the seas. I fear black sails more than red ones." "We will be ready," Jon promised. Robb met him last. They exchanged no words, only a forearm grasp that said what kings and lords could not. Ghost loped ahead as horn sounded. Jon glanced back once. Saw Robb atop the battlements, cloak whipping, crown catching sun. Then he turned his horse toward the rolling northern road, beneath slate clouds pregnant with snow. They crossed the Trident by boardwalks lashed swift, tracked east of the King's Road to skirt Tywin's regrouped host. Scouts flitted. Rumors of Renly's dying beneath a shadow. Stannis broken at Blackwater. Ned Stark's sentence postponed but perilous. Each whisper pricked sharper. At Moat Cailin, they tarried. The Crannogmen reported White Harbor's ships massing. Davos Seaworth smuggler, fleet sighted far out in Bravos roads. Jon dispatched ravens to Lady Manderley, urging readiness should war wash onto salt. He refortified towers, planted barbed stakes in bog, left a garrison under Hallis Mullen. Snow thickened by the day. On the 12th sunrise out of the neck, the sky bleached bone white and let fall heavy curtains. The world shrank to hoofbeats and breath. Jon pushed hard, fearful of becoming entombed, but men flagged. He ordered rotating vanguard, borrowed belts for those who'd lost weight to fever, shared last honey mead among wounded. The storm ended as abruptly as it began. When clouds tore open, Winterfell's gray ramparts stood etched against the clear sky, a jagged line between land and heaven. Smoke feathered from its chimneys, warm, welcoming. Yet as Jon drew nearer, unease gnawed. The smoke columns were too many, too dark. And smell, acrid, oily, rode the breeze. Ghost bayed low. Crows spiraled above the broken castle gate, cawing like funeral bells. Jon's heart slammed. He spurred forward, outriders thundering behind. Snow churned under cantering hooves. The great oaken doors of Winterfell hung splintered, blackened. Scorch marks spiderwebbed stone. Inside, the yard was a charnel pit. Charred beams, collapsed roofs, corpses half buried in ash drifts where snow melted on still hot embers. Jon reined it in. Shock, choking breath. Memory collided with nightmare. He saw Bran practicing archery by the butts. Saw Arya pelt him with snowballs. Heard Maester Luwin lecturing chirpingly of bannermen. All turned to cinders. The scouts fanned out. Shouts rose. "Here, body, there tracks!" The stables were gutted, but direwolf prints padded through soot. Ghosts sniffed, whined, traced circles. In the godswood, the heart tree stood untouched, blood-red leaves glistening. At its base lay Maester Luwin, gray robes soaked crimson. He lived but inches from death, breath bubbling. Jon knelt, cradled the old man's head. "Who?" he rasped. Luwin's eyes fluttered open, glassy. Gray. Gray cloaks. Betrayed. Iron. Kraken. The words tore Jon like barbed wire. Kraken died. Theon died below. Luwin's hand clutched Jon's collar, desperate. "Bran. Rickon. South, you must." Breath failed him. Jon felt the life slip away. He closed the maester's eyes, throat raw. Outside, snow fell anew, whispering over ruins. Bolton's riders combed rubble, grim. One returned bearing a tattered banner. Stark boy direwolf on white field, defaced with flayed man sketches, and a smear of gray paint shaped like a kraken's hooked beak. Jon's fingers tightened until knuckles blanched. Roose Bolton watched, pale eyes reflecting ruin. "Theon Greyjoy," Jon said, voice low as midnight ice. "He will answer for this." Bolton inclined head, ever so slightly. "Vengeance is a dish best served in measured courses. We should secure the holdfast first." Jon ignored him, strode to the shattered gatehouse. Snowflakes dusted his hair. Refugees clustered behind, hushed by horror. He turned. "Winterfell is torn," he said, loud enough for every soul to hear, "but not dead. We live in every heart here, in every sword we raise. We will rebuild stronger, but first we hunt. Bran and Rickon run somewhere in these snows. We bring them home, and the Kraken son who brought fire to our door, he will find no water deep enough to drown my wrath." A fierce cry rose, Karstarks, Umbers, townsfolk alike. Ghost lifted head and howled, the sound reverberating through broken towers like the voice of old kings. Jon felt it echo inside ribs, a promise forged of grief and iron. He ordered triage tents raised, ovens stoked from unburned wood. Survivors questioned. Bit by bit a tale emerged. Theon Greyjoy had seized Winterfell with 50 men, proclaiming rule, only to be betrayed by Bolton's bastard, who slaughtered both Ironborn and Starks alike, firing the keep as he fled. Bran and Rickon vanished in chaos. Some believed them dead, others whispered escape through crypts. Jon's mind burned. Betrayal nested inside betrayal. Roose Bolton feigned ignorance of his bastard's deeds, but Jon saw calculation in pale irises. For now, he restrained fury. The children came first. He led search parties into crypts, beneath weirwood roots, across snow-swept fields. They found only empty horse stalls, hidden passages collapsed, fresh wolf tracks veering toward the wolfswood. 2 nights passed, hope dimming. On the third dawn, a horn blast echoed from North Ridge. Jon raced to find a ranger waving furiously atop a wind-scoured boulder. Below, in the shadow of ancient oaks, padded a shaggy direwolf, gray, smaller than Ghost, flanked by a boy astride a gigantic bare-backed elk, another boy of near 4 clinging to his side. A wildling woman guided them, spear in hand, eyes wary. Jon ran half-sliding down slope. Bran's thin face split in wonder when Ghost bounded ahead and nudged his leg. Rickon squealed, burying hands in Ghost's fur. Jon knelt, arms enveloping them both, tears freezing upon lashes. "Hodor carried us," Bran whispered, voice quavering. "Then the wolf women found us. Osha kept us safe." Jon looked up at the spear-wielding wildling. She shifted weight, lips quirking. "Ought to feed the wee wolves now. They've run far." He nodded gratitude beyond words. They returned to Winterfell under direwolf guard, survivors cheering, hope fired anew. Jon swore protections to Osha, Hodor, and 2 reed children who crept from trees later, proclaiming loyalty to Bran. The castle livened with triage songs and hammer clang as makeshift roofs covered collapsed halls. Yet the scars ran deep. That night, Jon crossed the yard to the charred shell of his father's solar. Moonlight silvered blackened beams. He knelt amid ashes, closed eyes, felt tears sting raw flesh. So much lost, yet more to come. He pictured Robb's crown, the realm aflame, kraken ships on icy tides, white shadows stirring beyond ragged wall. Duty stacked upon duty until spine bent. But he would not break. A lord's chain might sag but not snap. Ghost settled by his side, warmth against cold stone. Jon whispered to the ashes, "I will mend you, father. I will mend every broken stone if I must set them with my own bones." "Thou," wind answered, a low moan through ruins, almost worded. Perhaps it said remember, or perhaps only the North's eternal lament. In the morning he wrote 20 letters. To Robb, to Lady Manderly, to Bear Island, to Eastwatch's Commander Mormont, speaking of dire need for men and grain. He sealed each with fresh wax, the direwolf stamp pressed deep. And beneath the seal he scratched 4 words, unseen but felt. The North still stands. As ravens beat black wings toward far horizons, Jon Snow, now truly stark, stepped onto Winterfell's battlements above a winter-white world. Fire's forges glowed below, casting sparks heavenward. He inhaled smoke and frost, the mingled scent of ruin and rebirth. Somewhere beyond those snows, kraken sails clapped wind, lion hosts rallied, and dead men prowled the silent wild. Jon's path stretched long, steep, and shadowed. Yet he felt his father's hand upon his shoulder, guiding. The godswood whispered, the wolves sang, and Winterfell, battered but unbowed, throbbed underfoot like the steady heart of the frozen earth, beating, 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 beating toward the dawn of whatever fight awaited. Omna, Nunishe, Bowed Byron Dolwendi Horror. Sequel. Morning broke as a cold kiss of pale light on blackened stone, creeping through the skeletal carcass of the burned great hall. Ash motes drifted in the sun shafts like dull snowflakes, and every step cracked charcoal beneath Jon's boots. He and the Winterfell masons had begun marking which sections could be saved, thicker walls that heat had only scalded pink, and which must be toppled before they failed of their own weight. 1,000 details clamored for answer. Fresh timber brought down the King's Road, lime for mortar, iron for new hinges, salt pork for masons, glass for the sept's shattered windows. Yet Jon's mind moved elsewhere, circling around 2 faces, Theon Greyjoy's and Ramsay Snow's, wolves' pelts draped across dagger grins. He paused where the dais once stood. Wind prowled through the wreck, rattling a half-melted candelabrum near his feet. On instinct he bent and worked it loose. Heavy bronze warped into a burled twist, then carried it outside to the yard. There, Bran waited in a wicker chair Hodor had fashioned from saplings. Maester Walken had come up from Castle Serwyn to tend the boy's fever. The maester now hovered with a draught of willow bark and honey. Bran's eyes were sunken but alert, following mason teams hefting oak logs between blackened stakes. "You'll have your haul again," Jon said, setting the twisted bronze upon a cart of salvage. Bran managed a thin smile. "I liked it better with roofs. Less weather inside. We'll fix that first." Jon ruffled Bran's hair. So much darker now, caked by smoke. Rickon toddled nearby whacking a charred rafter with a stick, while Osha pretended stern disapproval. Grey Wind and Ghost lay in mirror repose along the barbican, heads on paws, red and amber eyes flicking at every clamor. Deary wolves anchored the children's hearts, proof that hope remained. Hoofbeats clattered beyond the gate. Hallis Mullen rode in with 3 ravens boxed at his saddle. Jon met him near the steps. "From River Run, from White Harbor, and from the Wall," Hallis announced, dismounting. Jon's pulse kicked. "Food first." Hallis cracked the White Harbor tube. Wyman Manderly's seal bloomed, blue wax. Jon read while the wind teased parchment. Grain barges loaded, oaths sworn for vengeance upon krakens. Harbor watch doubled. Good. He tucked the letter. The parchment from River Run was Robb's own hand, a sprawl of hurried ink. The king promised 500 builders under Galbart Glover to help raise Winterfell anew, and 100 master smiths to reforge cracked portcullis chains. But darker ink smeared the closing lines. Tywin had taken Harrenhal again, Stannis brooded on Dragonstone, and Renly's death had torn the realm along unseen seams. Robb urged Jon to keep Bran hidden from southern eyes. Whispers spread that the true-born heir lived, and any Lannister knife could buy more than one head. Jon folded the letter slow. The last raven he left unopened until he stood alone in the broken sept, where melted candles still scented the air of beeswax and tallow. The wall's seal bore the black sword, the ink spotted by frost. Lord Commander Mormont's words marched stark. I write from Craster's Keep. The dead walk in numbers. We burned the bodies of 6 brothers, risen blue-eyed. Samwell Tarly slew one with dragonglass. 3 rangers lost beyond the fist. We flee south to the wall, harried each night by cold cries. Send any aid your north can spare. If Winterfell falls, the realm falls after. Jon closed his eyes. The ruin under his boots no longer mattered if pale demons pressed toward the wall. With Bran's visions of a 3-eyed raven ringing his ears, he hurried to the solar where Sir Roderick Bolton's steward Steelshanks Walton and Lady Barbary Dustin studied maps of Dreadfort country. The wall bleeds, Jon said without preamble, laying Mormont's plea upon the table. I must answer. Roderick's mustache bristled. Ride yourself, my lord. Winterfell scarcely stands on 2 legs. Better 2 legs than none. I'll not hide behind stone while brothers die. We'll send grain and men enough to hold Eastwatch. Lady Dustin's smile was thin. And when Kraken sail up the White Knife? Jon met her flint gaze. Then our rebuilt portcullis will show its teeth. A low cough came from the doorway. Roose Bolton entered, quiet as snowfall. Even in soot-gray daylight his eyes glimmered pale. My lord, he intoned. May I offer counsel? Jon gestured. Speak. You propose to march north within a month, with half your retainers still digging graves, and the rest hunting Ramsay among 300 leagues of forest. Bolton's voice never rose, yet its chill spread. If you leave, chaos will breed like maggots. Chaos is already hatched, Jon answered, throwing a glance to Lady Dustin, rumored lover to the old Lord Dustin flayed at the Trident. But dead men do not wait polite. Bolton's fingers tapped the parchment. Allow my Dreadfort levy to track Ramsay. Give me authority to meet East Stark justice. Meanwhile, you secure the wall. It was a cobra's bite masked as courtesy. Jon weighed. Granting Roose license risked deeper betrayal, yet refusing might brand him timid and overproud. He had no proof Bolton conspired with the bastard's treachery. Only suspicion and the stench of flayed skin. You accept full accountability? Jon asked. Entirely, Bolton said. Then ride. Jon pointed to the map. Take 200 of your silent ones. Bring me Ramsay alive if you can, dead if you must. Bolton bowed with a whisper of wool. As you command, my king. I am no king, Jon corrected. Pale lips curled. Not yet. He turned and left. That night Jon conferred with Maester Walken beneath a copper lamp. They listed garrison strengths. 100 Karstark swords, 60 umbers, 40 Serwyn archers, 30 ironborn prisoners, pressed into rebuilding watches under guard. Barely enough to hold outer walls against a serious assault. Yet the true threat prowled beyond rime-capped peaks. Food? Jon asked. If Manderley's grain arrives before deep winter, we live, Walken said. If not, he left the rest unsaid. Snowflakes pattered the window glass, frail preludes to larger storms. Jon's mind tallied every crumb, every arrowhead. In the gloom he glimpsed Ned Stark's silhouette in shadow, as if his father stood beyond lamp reach, silent judge of each decision. At dawn he summoned a dozen riders, stout doth shepherds from the nearby hills, 2 wildling spearwives sworn to Bran, and Sir Roderick to command. They would bear Lord Commander Mormont a wagon of dragonglass knives, unearthed from flint cliff barrows, plus ravens promising more once egg kilns could bake new arrowheads from captured lime beds. Ride hard, Hide by day, Jon instructed Roderick. Break no bread with unknown hearths. If whites roam, even a candle can betray. Mayher. Roderick saluted, mustache rhymed in frost. Hodor lifted Bran into Jon's saddle to bid farewell. The little lord's eyes brimmed, but did not spill. Tell the old bear Winterfell remembers. Roderick clasped Bran's forearm. Ace the Green's ear commands. The column vanished into whirling flurries that afternoon. Jon watched until cloaks blended with snow. Work resumed. Each dawn blasts of hammer on anvil rang where the smithy had survived. Micken's niece oversaw. Cheeks blister red, forging strap hinges from lion helm plates, melted in Jon's skirmish. Square by square, Winterfell crawled back to life. Chickens scratched ash-rich soil and found fat grubs. Ponds iced over but yielded trout to patient spears. Shepherd girls from the Barrowlands brought a bleating flock to trade for salt and a roof. Hope licked like flame. Evenings, Jon met Bran in the library tower, amid stacks of smoke-stained tomes. Osha dozed by the brazier, while the reed girl, Mira, gutted rabbits on the sill for stew. Bran pored over dusty annals of the long night, hunting any mention of dragonglass or flames that burned blue. He spoke of dreams where a three-eyed raven perched behind his shoulder, showing sprawling roots nether-deep beneath the wall. Jon listened, half believing, half fearing stolen childhood. If you see more, wake me, Jon told him. Even at midnight. Bran nodded solemn. Midnight is when ravens talk loudest. On the 12th evening, a gale roared out of the east, hurling shards of ice against battlements. Guards sighted torches wavering along the King's Road. Jon strode to the gatehouse. Wind whipped cloak tails horizontal as lanterns neared. Lady Lyanna Mormont astride a shaggy Garon, flanked by a score of islanders in bearskin and chain. The girl dismounted before Jon, chin sharp as a dagger. The Ironborn raid our fishing camps, she said, spitting snow. We lost 2 longboats. The Bare Isles answer with claws. I come to pledge spears, if Winterfell pledges ships. White Harbor's docks fill as we speak, Jon replied. Split whaling masts for keels. Sail in spring. Until then, my only ships are oaken wagons. She sniffed. Wagons float poorly. But a Stark's word floats enough. She thrust a parchment, bare paw on dark green wax, into his glove. 60 good men remain under your command. If you fail us, their mothers will carve your sigil on your grave. Jon smiled through chattering cold. Then I'll not fail. Welcome, Lady Lyanna. She stomped past, barking at guards to show proper quarters. The islanders followed, each bow-backed under pelts white as foam, eyes shining in torch glow. Good. The north knitted itself. Another week slid by. Ravens from Eastwatch arrived describing Mormont's safe return and a partial recount of his men. 11 died, 3 rose, 2 slain by Samwell's dragonglass. The wall braced for full assault should the snows ease. Jon wrote back promising 50 archers once spring allowed his levy to ride. Snow deepened, blanketing memories of charred beams until all looked calm to a distant eye. But Jon felt tension in the air, thin ice above black depths. Each sunrise he circled ramparts with Ghost, noting frost fractures where mortar crumbled, ordering quick patches. One chill morning, Theon Greyjoy's sister sailed into White Harbor per rumor, calling herself Queen of Salt and Rock, demanding the boy's head for treason. Wyman Manderley's letter crackled with relish, describing sardines stuffed in her mouth, until she named White Harbor neutral. Jon reread the line thrice, unsure if jest. He needed truth. So he summoned Davos Seaworth, now wandering envoy for the disinherited King Stannis. 2 ravens flew, one to Sisterton, one to Pike, offering safe passage beneath direwolf truce to parley over Theon's crimes. Whether either party would answer remained gamble. Winter's heart approached. Cold snapped so fierce men's nostrils bled. Bran dreamed of wolves at the Trident, frozen mid-leap. Smiths could hammer only at midday. Water spilled at dawn froze before touching earth. Yet inside the kitchens, new hearths roared. Gilly, refugee from beyond the wall. sang lullabies to Rickon while churning goat butter. Melting snow in copper cauldrons became daily chore, but the children's laughter made walls feel alive. One bright noon Rolf Talhart returned from arranging with grim news. Bolton parties rode through Dreadfort villages bearing black sacks, silent save for screams at night. No sign of Ramsay's capture. Talhart pulled aside his scarf to show a secret mark burnt upon a tree, a flayed man skinned in sap where bark peeled. Message or warning, he did not know. John dismissed him to thaw by fire. Alone in the rebuilt war room, he pored over a map of the Dreadfort's lands. Each tower, each crofter's hamlet plotted. Every path his father once rode in quiet musters. He felt the urge to chase Bolton himself, but duties chained him to Winterfell. Bran and Rickon needed living family. That night, a horn blast echoed above swirling snow. Riders approached, men in mottled cloaks caked with mud. They brought Ramsay's collar of brass. In the hall, John faced their captain, one of Bolton's silent men, whose eyes never lifted higher than John's throat. "A gift," the man said, producing the collar engraved with stylized wolves bound in chains. It stank of dog and copper. "We found it where the bastard of Bolton fell alongside 10 Ironborn. Greyjoy himself, not sighted." "No." John turned the collar in gloved hands. No body produced. "And Ramsay?" The soldier shrugged. "Flayed by his own dogs, it seemed. We buried what we found." Joan's skin crawled. He dismissed the man with reward of silver, then carried the collar to a forge. He set it upon an anvil, took Micken's heaviest hammer, and struck. Bronze links burst like rotten teeth. Sparks sprayed his cloak. He hammered until nothing but warped shards remained. "Father said even a child of your enemy deserves a quick death," John whispered to the embers. "I pray yours was quicker than the misery you sowed." He scattered fragments into the coals. Days later, a procession of war galleys ground through ice floes to berth at White Harbor. Manderley's grain arrived in sleigh convoys, guarded by knights of the Green Apple and ranks of fishermen archers wearing cod-scale cloaks. The supply chains pulsed lifeblood into Winterfell's cellars: barley, beans, smoked eel, casks of applejack. In gratitude, John declared a winter festival. Small folk thronged the bailey, stringing burnt orange banners shaped like suns to banish gloom. Bran insisted on presiding from a carved wooden throne. Rickon chased puppies while slurping honeyed oatcakes. Even Lady Dustin danced a single round with Sir Roderick before stalking off blushing. Snow drummed beyond braziers, but laughter cracked the air thick as honey wine. John allowed himself a smile at the sight. In that moment, he felt his father's spirit, warm as hearthstone. Yet night fell, sharp. In the Godswood, Bran lit 3 red candles before the heart tree, his limp legs tucked under a bear pelt. John knelt beside him. Above, pale curtains of aurora swept across black sky. Green and violet serpents undulating in silence. "They call it the Raven's Path," Bran murmured, eyes reflecting the lights. John glanced up. The colors rippled like ghostly banners. "Old Nan said it appears when magic walks." "It means the wall shivers," Bran whispered. He drew breath. I think I saw Uncle Benjen standing in snow with blue eyes." He tried to speak, but no sound came. Joan's heart seized. A dream, or a warning. Bran grasped Joan's wrist. "You must ride soon. The wall wants you." John hugged him close. Over Bran's shoulder, he watched the sky riot. He could almost taste Frostwind howling 1,000 leagues north. The next day, he held council. Lady Dustin, Lady Mormont, Micken's niece, Maester Walken, Sir Roderick returned, and Howland Reed's children speaking for their father. They argued supply, garrison, threats. At last, John spoke. "We march at new moon. 2,000 spears under Lady Mormont and Sir Roderick. Another 1,000 archers follow once roads firm." He fixed each pair of eyes. "Winterfell bows to neither crown nor kraken until the wall is safe." No voice descended. Plans unfurled. Galbart Glover to remain Castellan. Maester Walken to oversee grain. Lady Dustin to command patrols across shivering forest. Even Bolton's steward accepted orders with expressionless nod. Though Jon saw promise of venom by candles, and Bran rolled to his brother's side, shawl trailing. "A raven from River Run," he said, handing a parchment. 8 words scrawled in Robb's quick hand. Kingslayer exchanged. Father freed. Ride south when ready. Air fled Jon's lungs. Ned free. After moons of dread? He reread, heart galloping. Bran grinned, tears shining. "He's coming home," Bran breathed. "Or south to meet Robb again," Jon said, dazed. Dream and reality tangled. He leaned against the stone embrasure, vision wobbling. "You'll see him. I saw it in leaves." Bran sounded older than seasons. Jon crushed the parchment, fighting surge of joy and fear. King's Landing would never lose a prize for charity. Robb must have paid blood, a trait of Jaime for Eddard no doubt, and who knew what dagger lingered behind golden smiles. Yet hope burst bright as dawn. He rallied at once, ravens to Moat Cailin to Barrowton to the twins instructing watchers to escort Ned north under heavy guard. Each message sealed with double wax. Then he stood upon the stone balcony, overlooking Winterfell's bailey, watching children slang along shattered ramparts, Smith's sparks rising like fireflies, the deerwolves loping sentinel circles. Life pulsed. A sudden toll of the bell startled him. 3 slow gongs, the signal of riders come bearing urgent heraldry. Jon descended, cloak snapping, as the gates opened under creak of new timbers. 2 figures rode through swirling snow. A gaunt man in black helm, and beside him, staggering in saddle, "Father!" Bran screamed from the rampart. Rickon's shrill cry echoed. Jon's legs moved numbly. The rider bowed, half collapsing. Ned Stark slid from his horse into Jon's arms, limbs thin, beard untrimmed. He smelled of damp straw, old wounds, Southron dungeons. But his eyes, gray as North Waterstone, shone fierce. "My boy," Ned rasped. Jon hugged him, tears freezing on cheeks. Bran and Rickon were hauled down by Hodor, tumbling into the embrace. Direwolves circled, noses snuffling. Ned's breath came ragged, yet joy cracked the frost between them. Beside them the gaunt rider dismounted, a man all ankles, cloaked in midnight cloth. He pulled back his hood revealing weather-lined features, a broken nose, cold blue eyes gleaming under iron will. Jon recognized him. Jorah Mormont, exiled knight, son of the Old Bear. Disgraced for slavery, gone east. Now returned. Paid debt. Jorah said curtly. "King Robb's orders, trade completed at Stone Mill. Jaime bound for Sunspear, your father for the north, I escorted." Jon studied him. Many would spit at Jorah's feet. Yet he had delivered Ned through Lion Country. Jon inclined his head. "Winterfell thanks you, sir." Jorah shrugged. "An oath for an oathbreaker. I stay until my father's summons." His voice cracked a shade at father. Jon nodded. A place among brothers regained. Ned was ushered to the solar blazing with furs, mulled wine forced past cracked lips. Maester Walken cleaned chain-rubbed wrists and stitched a cut. Jon, Bran, Rickon, even Lady Catelyn, arrived next day through snow-laden carriage, gathered tight. Tears melted into smiles. Stories poured. Tyrion arranged trade under secret vow. Jaime's freedom, ironically robbing Cersei of her golden shield. Sansa yet hostage to ensure Ned's silence. Arya still missing. Robb claimed victories along Red Fork, crowned by both Riverlords and North. Ned's voice rasped with each account. Jon heard weight behind every syllable. Secrets he would share only in shadows, perhaps. But there was time. For now, father and son sat before hearth where new direwolf banners hung. Joy warmed stone. The season turned despite storm. On midwinter's eve, when the sky bled indigo and stars glittered like brittle glass, Jon convened one final council before his wall campaign. Ned, though weak, insisted on attending. He sat wrapped in wolf fur, gaze clear. "I should ride," he said, shaking off Catelyn's protest. "The old gods spared my life for purpose. Perhaps this." You freed from chains only days, Jon argued gently. You're needed to calm the bannermen to show the North its lord still stands. Ned looked to Catelyn, to Bran's crippled legs, to Rickon nodding sleepily against Shaggy Dog. He exhaled, then returned swift, snow, stark. His hand clasped Jon's, strength still there under parchment skin. And remember your vows to Night's Watch remain in heart, if not cloak. Jon bowed head. Always. They embraced once more beneath torchlight. Father's whisper at Jon's ear. Protect them. Dawn rose peach gold behind whirling flakes. Horns blew thrice for departure. Jon rode at column's head, ghost beside, Mormont's raven letter tucked near heart, Lyanna Mormont's bear riders raising spears. Behind, Winterfell's rebuilt gates towered, scarred but strong. Ned watched from rampart, cloak fluttering like memory. The north lay spread white and wide. Frostbite, stung yet sun glimmered hope. Jon's breath plumed as he spurred forward. Beneath the steady thunder of hooves, beneath banners snapping, beneath the hush of icy wind, he carried 3 names inside his chest. Snow, Stark and Watch. And he carried one vow older than any, to guard the realms of men. Toward the wall they rode, where dead things walked and the night itself stirred. Toward battles songs had yet to imagine. But a dire wolf's howl broke clear across the frosted morning, and for that heartbeat, the living held the field. We. Scuel. Silence ruled the King's Road as Jon's column pressed northward. A hush so complete that the creak of every axle and the muffled clop of every iron-shod hoof rang like hammers in a stone hall. Snowbank walls loomed higher each day, blanketing the forest in a white hush that swallowed bird call and wolf cry alike. Jon rode at the van beneath an overcast sky, ghost pacing at his right stirrup, paws leaving neat crimson prints where press of weight exposed frozen leaf litter below. Behind him flowed 2,000 souls. Mormont spearmen Shaggy in sealskin, Serwyn bowman with green fletching, Lady Lyanna's Bear Island Glover mail, and a handful of wildling spearwives, bound to Bran by the strange piping of children of the forest. Wheeled wagons rattled under bolts of ice-guard alder planks, each bearing sacks of manderly grain or crates of dragonglass arrowheads packed in straw carone. Above it all hung the heavy weight of stillness, a hush that reeked not of peace, but of something waiting. Each noon Jon called the host to halt, ordering fires banked low while scouts quartered the woods. There was little game, only scrawny conies that bolted at the first whiff of smoke, and fewer sounds save the whisper of flakes drifting through bare branches. They slept in a creeping tide of chill. First the toes, then the fingertips, then dreams themselves frosting round the edges. Yet no man balked, for an unspoken promise rode in the chill air, the promise that the wall needed them, that the realm of men would not fall as long as their spears held straight. On the 7th evening, a red sun bled through a slit in slate-gray clouds, painting the snowdrifts coral. Jon set camp beneath a half-collapsed holdfast, whose moss-covered stones told of ancient Andals in flight. Lyanna Mormont stalked through the ring of cook-fires like a tiny queen amid giants, inspecting bedroll spacing, berating a sentry who had dozed with chin on breast. When she reached Jon, he offered a tankard of warmed cider, but she waved it aside with brusque dignity. "The forest is wrong," she said. "I smell salt on the wind, though we're 50 leagues from sea." Jon sipped, tasting only smoke. "The North remembers ways we've forgotten. Perhaps the wind carries word from Bear Isle. Then it whispers of blood." She tugged her bearskin tighter. "I'll double watches." He nodded. Lyanna strode off, her banner sergeant trailing like a dutiful hound. Jon tipped the rest of his cider into the snow. It hissed and vanished, leaving only steam. Shortly after moonrise, Ghost stiffened. His low growl rippled through the hush faster than any horn blast. Jon was on his feet, while others still blinked sleep from their eyes. From the dark between pines scuttled 3 shapes, black against black, gaunt as old ghosts. They staggered into firelight, rangers of the Night's Watch, cloaks ragged, frosted beards clotted with crusted blood. The foremost collapsed to one knee before Jon, bearing a crudely bound bundle. "Lord Stark," he rasped. "Sent to warn." He thrust the bundle forward. Dragonglass arrowheads clinked out. Each point snapped, hardened, and they shattered. Wasn't the glass failed, it was the cold. Their cold. Jon crouched, steadying the man's shoulders. "Who are you?" "Benamir of Sable Hall. We held the Doen Watch trail. Whites came in fog, dead ravens riding dead horses. Arrows broke like sugar. Only fire bit them." His wild eyes fixed on Jon. "They come slow, my lord. Slow as winter, but they never tire." Jon helped the ranger drink. Behind them, the camp rippled alive. Sir Roderick rallying spears to the perimeter. Lyanna shouting for oil to douse arrows. Bear Islanders striking flint in braziers of tallow. The two surviving rangers were laid on bedrolls near the command fire. Both moaned in fever dreams. At dawn, Benamir died. When his corpse was dragged toward the pyre, ghosts snarled, and the camp hushed. Every man watched while Jon himself set torch to oil-soaked logs. As the flames coiled skyward, the hush broke. Mormont men chanted the old Bear Island dirge, a wordless howl that wavered between lament and promise. It ended with silence sharper than steel. Jon scattered a handful of crystalline arrow shards into the flames, and vowed they would forge new ones twice as strong, core wrapped in thin iron bands to ward the cracking cold. By the 9th day, frost clung to mustaches like brittle lace. The neck lay behind, its reed-haunted mists replaced by towering firs petrified in rime. At dusk, the vanguard reached Mole's town, only to find the hamlet deserted. Doors splayed, shutters flapping. Chickens pecked frozen bread crusts from empty windowsills. No blood, no bodies, only a hush so deep even their breath sounded sacrilege. Jon left coin in the tithe box of the shuttered septi, though no priest remained to bless it. A league farther north, the first wall of the world reared against star-freckled sky. The wall's pale immensity always stunned him, even after visits in younger days. Now at dusk it glowed ghost blue where torchlight flickered along its summit. Castle Black's gatehouse lantern sparked amber against the ice. Jon halted the column while horns pealed thrice. Torches bobbed beyond the trench. The drawbridge creaked down. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont himself strode to meet them, flanked by Sir Jeremy Riker and dour Bowen Marsh. Age had whittled Mormont's frame but not his bearing. His cloak of aged bear hide dragged across packed snow like the trailing story of a legend. He clasped Joan's forearm. "You've crossed half a frozen world in the nick of time," he growled. "We cannot fill the gaps in the ring wall faster than corpses dig under." Joan's gaze slid past to Castle Black's courtyard. Fires glowed in every alcove. Brothers hurried with bundles of kindling, sacks of salt, barrels of pitch. Crude scaffolds hugged the outer wall where repairs bristled like a hedgehog's spines. Men coughed and hammered, their faces gaunt. "Report?" Jon asked, voice low. "Packs ranging nightly," Mormont said. "Numbers grow. We've lost the Shadow Tower to a breach. Donal Noy held the gate 3 nights, but no more. Eastwatch stands only because the tide keeps whites from crossing ice on both flanks. They probe the main stairs here, testing. Mayhaps they fear the fire arrows, but fear cuts thin with each moon." Jon's throat tightened. "Then we light bigger fires." They rode under the arch. Lyanna's bears dismounted with crisp order. Serwyn bowmen stacked bundled arrows tipped in pitch. The wildling spearwives clucked tongues at Castle Black's pigs, remarking the beasts grew soft behind walls. Tension rippled between black cloaks and northern levies. But Jon quelled it with a shouted reminder that cold dead made no distinction between oath and birth. Men muttered but obeyed. The old empire of survival establishing its dominion. That night, planning filled the Lord Commander's solar, a chamber cluttered with candle stubs, half-finished scrolls, and Samuel Tarley's neat ledgers of supply. Sam greeted Jon with watery eyes, shoulders broader than last meeting but tremor in hands unchanged. He reported arrow stocks, saltpeter for wildfire mix, and the precariously thin line of oats that stood between garrison and hunger. Jon studied each tally, committing them to memory the way his father once studied septic drafts for Rickon's colic. Then they unfurled a sheepskin map scored by fresh charcoal strokes. It showed the wall in cross-section: main gate at Castle Black, minor stairs at Queensgate, stone tower at Eastwatch. Beside each scribble, Sam had noted white sightings, an expanding blotch like rot creeping under skin. There were too many. Jon felt weight settle on shoulders, already bowed by 500 leagues of command. He proposed a sally: 200 spears to ride through the haunted forest, torching every corpse hung in dead snows, collapsing weirwood burrows whites used as dens. Bowen Marsh objected that leaving walls thin defense. Mormont hammered his fist and said the wall could not survive a siege from all sides. They must bite, not only bark. Sam spoke timidly of dragonglass mines rumored in Skagos. Lyanna volunteered Bear Island's best hunters for the trek across narrow sea freeze, should it come to that. Arguments whirled until dawn's gray drip oozed down frosted windows. In the end they agreed. One strike force would ride at moonrise to White Tree Village, there to torch the pyres of 2 score wildling dead, reported by scouts. Jon chose to lead in person. He'd have denied any other lord, but this weight sat on him alone. No parchment or banner could carry it. He took Ghost, 30 bear riders, 40 Serwyn archers, 20 brothers of the watch under Ser Riker, and 10 wildling spearwives who grinned at the chance to wage war on death itself. They left at dusk. Pine boughs rattled overhead like dried bones. Snowflakes drifted in lazy spirals that caught the torchlight. Mile followed mile of frozen hush until a distant glow flickered ahead. White Tree's massive heart tree, trunk hollowed by time into a weeping maw. Within that cavity lay stacked corpses, their skin grier than the bark, their eyes blue as cracked sapphire. They stirred as torchlight brushed them. Jon ordered arrows lit, spears leveled. The village erupted in shrieks, some bestial, some human. The whites lurched out, limbs stiff, mouths grinning rictus. Dragonglass daggers slammed into eye sockets. Limbs flew. Yet each severed hand crawled like a white spider until burned. Ghost barreled through snow, jaws crushing a thing that once wore furs of the then. The Bear Island spears fought back to back, swearing in the old tongue. Flames leapt higher, catching thatched roofs. Sparks shot into star-speckled sky. Jon cleaved a corpse down the collarbone, Valyrian steel smoking in icy blood. Something moved in the tree line, pale, thin as moonlight, eyes burning blue flame. A White Walker. Jon felt the temperature plummet. Every inhale stabbed like shards of glass. The walker raised a clawed hand. Frost raced along the ground in a crackling wave. Freezing torch heads solid. Dark fell in a single exhale. But Jon had prepared. He barked a word. 2 archers beside him flipped wax-sealed bundles into the air. Gravelly spark eggs purchased from Korth traders by Manderley gold. They burst mid-arc, scattering alchemists' fire. Night lit as noon. The walker shrieked, arms shielding face, ice armor popped. Jon lunged. Longclaw struck with the high ringing note of a temple bell. Frozen armor cracked. Blue ichor spattered. The walker dissolved in shards like shattered glass. The cold eased. Whites faltered, collapsing as puppets severed from strings. In the hush that followed, only wood crackled, and men's breathing filled the void. Jon wiped sword across cloak hem, watching fragments sift like snow, and melt into steam under ordinary flame. They stacked the remaining corpses, drizzled tar, and set a pyre that blazed bright enough for the wall to glimpse. Then they rode home, weary but unbroken. At Castle Black horns blew in triumph, though the faces that met them knew victory tasted like ash. Every wind felt only a gasp before next wave. Over the next fortnight, Jon oversaw forging of new dragonglass arrowheads, reinforced with thin wraps of castle-forged steel. Sam and the spearwives taught men how to bind live flame beneath arrowheads with gut and cloth. The brothers grew adept, though some lost fingers to the biting cold that turned cloth oil brittle. Reports flooded in. Eastwatch sighted a column of whites marching under banners of icy weirwood. The Shadow Tower, sent a raven describing corpses of giants pulling a tree trunk rammed at die. The smell of doom seeped into Castle Black's very timbers. Then one wind-flayed morning, a single horn blast shattered the camp's uneasy half-slumber. Riders from the south approached under direwolf banner. When the gate lifted, Jon's breath caught. Sansa Stark stood wrapped in gray-mailed riding cloak, cheeks wind-burned but eyes alight. Behind her rode Edric Dane, a handful of riverlords, and a tall spearman in Tully blue. They bore 3 wagons piled with casks of wildfire drawn from King's Landing's forgotten caches, prices paid by Brynden Tully's spies. "Robb feared your fire's dying," Sansa explained, voice trembling half from cold, half from nervous joy. "Father kept me in Kin's hold, but I would not stay idle. The Kingslayer's escape shattered any Lannister promise of my safety." She touched Jon's hand. "I am tired of cages, brother." Jon squeezed back tears. In those blue eyes he saw Winterfell's broken hall made whole again. He welcomed her inside, the brothers offering hot broth and blankets. Ghost curled around her feet like a silent guardian. The following council hammered out a desperate plan. To lure the largest mass of whites to the gorge, a narrow pass east of Icemark, then ignite trenches of wildfire mixed with lamp oil and pitch. The pass's sheer stone walls would channel the army into a throat of flame. Their frost would feed the fire's unnatural rage if Sam's alchemical notes proved true. 3 nights later, under a moon slivered thin as a cat's claw, Jon led the bait force out. 100 riders bearing sheaves of green-fletched arrows, Sansa's wildfire wagon following at distance, under Tully guards. Wind rattled through trees sharp as broken glass. Behind every trunk Jon imagined sapphire eyes. They reached the gorge at dawn's bloody light, set casks in staggered rows, and laced trenches with ropes of oiled hemp. Then they waited. Snow fell. Hush upon hush. Hours bled. Just as twilight streaked the sky purple, the forest beyond the creek erupted in movement. An avalanche of silent shapes. Whites poured through broken scrub. A grotesque pageant of flesh and bone rimed with frost. In their midst stalked 5 white walkers, blades crackling blue at their hips. Jon gave the signal. Archers lit wicks with flint wheels. Glowing sparks skittered down fuses. They loosed. Flaming arrows streaked overhead, arcing into the trenches with dull woofs. Emerald fire roared up, savage and hungry, licking stone walls. An eerie green glow painted the faces of both living and dead, monstrous and angelic at once. At first the whites faltered, confused by the unnatural color, but the walkers hissed. An inaudible command pulsed through the ranks. The dead surged on, shuffling over companions that caught flame. Every spark blossomed fiercer, feeding on the cold, as Sam predicted. Flames soared 30 feet, roaring like dragons long vanished. Jon watched the wall of fire meeting a tide of ice. White walkers raised swords, frost coiling along the air. One hurled a spear of purest icicle. It flew like a comet, skewering a Serwyn archer and embedding in granite behind. Another stepped forward, frost swirling around its ankles, and slashed at the wildfire barrier. Where blue blade met green flame, colors writhed. Then the blade cracked, crystalline fracture blossoming across the walker's torso. It screeched, horror slicing the sky, before shattering. Encouraged, Jon led a volley of dragonglass arrows. Tips sang, punching through glowing haze to pierce walkers. 3 fell. The whites shivered, lost momentum. Some turned on each other blindly. Jon signaled advanced parties to scoop firepots with sling hooks, flinging liquid emerald onto clustered dead. Flames flourished, famine feeding. By dawn's first gold, a carpet of charred remains blackened the pass. Smoke spiraled in lazy curls. Only one walker remained, mantle torn, eyes guttering. It retreated toward the woods, and their brand's direwolf summer burst from hidden rock slope, jaws clamping calf. The walker staggered. A spearwife named Sala darted forward with obsidian dagger, and drove it under the creature's chin. Blue light winked out. The corpse collapsed, ice husk thawing into sludge. No cheer rose, exhaustion strangled voices, but relief pulsed. Jon ordered trenches quenched with snow to spare scarce fuel. Sansa oversaw casualty litters. Wildling spearwives sang soft laments while stacking bones for burning. As they worked, flakes drifted, thickening fast. Jon looked skyward. Not ordinary snow, ash swirling with flakes. A gray storm from something greater than weather. A roar trembled the ground. Men froze. Distant, low, unmistakable. Not thunder. Something alive. Jon's memory flashed to old Nan's tales of cold dragons made of shadow. His hand tightened on Longclaw. One. But through the gloom soared three shapes, wings beating thunder. Not cold dragons, living ones wrong for color. Scales gleamed obsidian, bronze, and jade. They circled once, then banked east. In their wake rumbled the sky, as if announcing change come upon the world. Jon exchanged a look with Sam, who whispered one name only he dared. Daenerys. Hope and dread tangled anew. If dragons rose in the east, so too might fire enough to meet winter's heart. But dragons carried queens, and queens carried wars. The realm already tore like rotted linen. They marched back to Castle Black, bearing ashes of triumph, and the omen of wings overhead. Mormont clasped Jon's forearm with pride. Bowen Marsh bowed without complaint. Sansa wept quietly at the tale of seared dead, yet her resolve shone. Letters flew south on raven wings, to Robb, to Ned, to White Harbor. The message was simple. We held but winter lives. Fire moves in east. Decide swiftly where honor steps, or the dark will decide for you. Days blended into nights. Repairs advanced. Iron-bound gates reinforced with oak, new catapults mounted atop the wall's switchback stairs, casks of wildfire hidden in caches along ice ramparts. Meanwhile, White Tree's pyre burned for 3 days unsated, leaving a glassy crater where once stood the weeping heart tree. Some mourned the loss. Others said gods do not dwell in husks of wood when dead men prowl. On the eve of the new moon, a rider came from Shadow Tower. Gaunt, eyes fever bright. He spoke of a new enemy. Giants in chains, bound by freezing mists, one-eyed and half alive. They marched west along the Frostfangs, uprooting pines to use as clubs. The Night's Watch could not match that might, not without open field and heavy horse. Jon stood atop the wall watching Aurora bleed green across star-speckled black. Sansa joined him, hair silvered by moonlight. He shared the tale. She clasped his hand, ungloved despite chill. "What now?" she asked. "We hold." His breath clouded. "We hold until Robb takes King's Landing, until Stannis chooses north over Crown, or until dragons fly over this ice. We hold because there is no one else." "You shouldered too much," Sansa whispered. "The wall's wide," he said. "Better 2 shoulders than 1. He managed a faint smile. "Father would scold me for stealing your childhood. Childhood ended the day they cut Lady's throat." She murmured, "I choose my duty." Together they gazed north where gray plains stretched to secrets deeper than night. Down in Castle Black's courtyard, Bran's raven perched on a rafter, 3 eyes glinting crimson where torchlight licked. It croaked once, a sound like cracks forming in distant ice. The morning horns woke them to word of fresh tracks beyond the ring wall, dead yet to return to dust, prowling in small packs, testing. Jon dispatched roving patrols, each bearing 3 jars of wildfire and a clutch of dragonglass darts. At midday, one patrol stumbled back with news. Buried among driftwood near the gorge, they found shards of obsidian fused to what looked like scales. Black, curved, large as shields. Old Nan's cold dragons, perhaps shed or slain. Sam pored over them by candle and declared them kin to dragon bone, only harder with veins of something crystalline and cold. Jon wrapped one shard in felt and sent it south on fastest messenger for Ned's scholars, scribbling note, "If fire dragons rise, ice dragons may too. Prepare." As winter deepened, the wall's nights grew alive with light, auroras, distant glows, flickers of wildfire along the battlements. Men spoke of ghost armies stalking the low hills, shapes glimpsed only in peripheral sight. Yet the wall stood. One dawn a holler rang, shapes on the horizon. Not wights, horse banners, many, glint of steel catching pale sun. The watchers tensed until a direwolf banner unfurled at the van, flanked by the Trident trout and a gray kraken torn in half. Robb Stark's host, marching to join the final defense with riverlords at his side. Ironborn prisoners pressed into service at spear point. At their head rode Ned Stark, cheeks hollow, yet eyes blazing. Beside him Queen Talisa with her healer's satchel, and, to everyone's astonishment, Lord Davos Seaworth. Behind Davos marched grim knights bearing the fiery heart stag of Stannis, a fragile alliance hammered by dread greater than throne. The gatehouse roared open. Jon strode out, ghost at heel. Father and son met amid swirling flakes. They said no words. 17 years of duty, failure, exile, forgiveness, fused in one embrace. Over Ned's shoulder Jon saw Robb clasp Sansa, saw Lyanna Mormont salute Stannis' grim envoy, saw Sam hugging Davos like lost kin. Unity born of necessity, but unity nonetheless. That night feasts filled Castle Black's every hall. Bread was scant, ale thin, yet laughter rose. Someone found a harp, plucked a Winterfell harvest ballad. Another followed with a Bear Island rowing chant. Even Stannis' door knights joined clapping as Sansa sang the lilting winter rose that her mother once hummed. Flames danced along stone walls. Outside, the dark pressed close but did not enter. When the last note faded, Ned rose. He spoke softly, yet every ear bent. He thanked the watch, the north, the river, and the mountain, the wildlings who crossed south for sanctuary. He named the coming trial not a war for crowns, but for dawn itself. His words rolled like steady drum beats, undine able. Then he passed the floor to Jon. Torches flickered, expectant. Jon did not speak of glory. He spoke of Benmir on that first night's pyre, of broken arrowheads that failed against cold, of a small pup named Ghost, who followed him beyond the walls of Winterfell, reminding that each living heart here had a name behind it, a story. He spoke of holding, not because they were unafraid, but because behind them slept children whose names they might never know. And he ended with the oldest vow in the Watch books, the words he never swore yet always carried. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. Every brother echoed, then every Northman, then wildlings, and finally, solemn, almost reluctant, the men of Southron banners. It rolled across Castle Black like thunder, up the ice face, out over the haunted forest, flung at the face of endless night. Later, alone on the wall's crest, Jon watched Ned embrace each of his sons of war, Robb, Theon newly recaptured and contrite, Bran perched on Hodor's broad back at the foot of the lift. Beneath them the combined hosts stirred, ranks upon ranks, spears frost-gilded. Far to the east green comets of wildfire traced the shore, ward fires at Eastwatch. West, torches on the Shadow Tower glimmered like a line of final outposts in a black sea. Jon closed his eyes. The wall hummed underfoot, hot with hidden fire, though forged of ice. Some murmured it was dragonflame frozen, others the breath of ancient giants. Tonight, it felt alive, blood pulsing. Ready? He thought of Daenerys and her dragons wheeling somewhere over a distant ash-tide desert. He thought of white walkers gathering under banners of storm. He thought of ice shards fused to scale bone, of gods weeping from oaken faces, of a three-eyed raven steering futures nobody yet glimpsed. All those threads knotted here, on a single slice of frozen land between darkness and dawn. Jon hailed icy perfume of pine and coal smoke, tasted fear and courage mingled. He placed a hand on Longclaw's pommel, felt ghost heat along Valyrian steel. The realm might fracture, kings might bicker, dragons might scour palaces, but none of it meant aught if this wall fell. And it would not fall, not tonight, not as long as men and direwolves and distant dragons and the stubborn fire in mortal hearts held. He whispered a silent prayer to nameless gods, to the spirits of stone kings under Winterfell, to old Nan's shade, to Maester Luwin haunting smoke of the old hall. He promised them a dawn. Then he turned south down the stair to gather captains, to draft watch lists, to sharpen blades and retie fuses. Somewhere, amid those mundane orders, he found time to smile at Sansa's jokes and ruffle Rickon's hair. The great matters of prophecy and doom would wait. For now, duty required bread rations counted, sick lists updated, latrine trenches dug deeper so sickness did not spread. That was the honest spine of the world. Small tasks done well regardless of legend swirling. When he finally sought his bedroll in an officer's cell, moon down and stars paling into pre-dawn gray, Ghost curled at his feet. Jon drifted near sleep while outside winds started to howl. In the cusp between waking and dream, he heard, or thought he heard, the faint drumming of massive wings circling far above the wall. One last promise of fire to meet ancient ice. He slept, but not lightly, and beyond the heavy wooden shutter dawn at last crept in pale and watchful, washing Castle black in a first winter light that glimmered off new-laid snow like tiny shards of hope waiting to be forged into something unbreakable. PGSQL. Dawn seeped across the wall in bruised shades of mauve and pewter, flooding every ragged line of ice with restless color. Jon Snow woke before the first horn, sliding out from beneath a rough woolen blanket that smelled of smoke and bear grease. Ghost stirred at his feet, ears pricking as though the wolf sensed the thoughts winding through his master's skull. Jon slipped into his heavy gambeson, laced the greaves just so, and stepped into the bitter corridor outside his chamber. The freeze of the corridor bit through the wool, but he had grown to savor the jolt. It reminded him that his veins carried heat, a living answer to the cold. The courtyard of Castle Black lay muffled beneath a night's fall of fresh powder, unmarred but for the narrow tracks of the first patrol's boots. Faint starlight sparkled on every drift. Yet within the hush simmered motion. Rangers behind the mess hall hefted barrels of salted beef onto sledges. Mormont's men cracked axes into fresh lumber near the armory. Sansa's wildfire detail bent over casks, stenciled with green dragons. Muffled calls drifted from one knot of workers to another, low enough not to break the stillness but focused enough to keep men moving. It was the sound of siege preparations, breathing in cadence with human resolve. Jon crossed the yard toward the smithy. Micken's niece Talia stood at the anvil with sparks dancing up her sleeves as she hammered thin iron straps around dull black shards of dragonglass. Her motions were economical, shoulders rolling with the same steadiness he remembered from Micken's shop at Winterfell, though the girl's face looked even leaner than he recalled, flesh pared down by cold and duty. Beside her the spear-wives-shaped shafts of dark weirwood scavenged from shattered timber trellises. Each completed spearhead bore a collar of blood-orange iron, hammered flat until it was no thicker than parchment, yet strong enough to brace the obsidian within. Jon picked up a finished spear and ran his gloved thumb along the joint. No grain of ice could shim the gap between iron and glass. The head glittered under lantern glow, sharp enough to slice the air. Talia paused, wiping her brow with a soot-smudged sleeve. "Won't break," she said simply. "It had better not." He tested the balance, then replaced it on the rack. "How many?" 50 finished. 17 more cooling on the rack. Another 30 ready by nightfall if I keep blowing the bellows. Her grin flashed white in the soot. "Ask the sun not to set, and I'll give you 100 more." "The sun doesn't listen to me on any day," he answered. "But thank you." He rested a hand on her shoulder for the briefest heartbeat, a gesture his father used to make when he could spare no more words. From the armory, Jon moved to the stable yards, where a pair of petty lords from the Rills were mounting a team of rangy destriers, stripped down to minimal tack, a sign they were meant for speed, not charge. They dipped heads as he approached. "Scouting the Frostfang fringe, my lord." Jon glanced at the stablemaster's parchment. The route arced west of Hardhome with strict return orders by the second night. The Rills men would travel light, each bearing 2 long-fletched dragonglass javelins strapped to the saddle. No tents, no pots. Survival would hinge on avoiding contact. He wished them the hidden luck the Starks once whispered on midwinter nights. "May the old wolves watch your step." They rode out, hooves crunching the powder, until nothing but a lingering breath of frost rose in their wake. He climbed the central switchback stair to the wall's crest. Halfway up, the dawn wind cut so fiercely that tears sprang unbidden to his eyes. then froze along his lashes. By the time he reached the topmost landing, the sky had paled to a shallow pearl, stained toward the west where the last stars drowned. A line of torches flickered along the merlons, each spaced exactly 15 paces. The glow revealed Ned standing alone by the outer edge, his wolf fur cloak stirring gently as though moved by something more reverent than mere wind. Ned's fingers brushed the frosted stone as Jon approached. No snowplow in all the north could level this view, Ned murmured without turning his head. I could see dawn like this each morning when I led rangers south of the Frostfangs, long before you were born. Never thought I'd witness it again. Jon halted beside him. The plain below looked untroubled, except for faint black troughs where patrols had skidded sledges between caches. Beyond that stretch, the haunted forest appeared deceptively still, pines laden with an innocence of snow. Yet he knew the hollow glens and frost-cracked stream beds there packed secrets. White tracks newly crusted, former ranger corpses with traitorous ice in their sockets. Somewhere deeper slithered things only Bran dreamed. Heart-weirwood groves shivering with remembered songs, lakes turned to mirror slabs where ancient shapes glided beneath. I keep thinking of Winterfell, Jon admitted, voice low so it vanished into the wind. You rebuilt it a dozen times in your own mind before you returned. I tried to do the same, but every hall was missing one stone or another. Ned turned, eyes lined with fatigue but warmer than firelight. The gods keep us busy enough repairing ourselves. Castles follow at their own pace. He rested a gentle hand on Jon's forearm. We can only hold ground until the little ones inherit something worth guarding. Jon nodded. Hold ground rang in his ears like a hammer strike. Not conquer, not push forward, simply hold. And so he turned from the view for now, because work demanded his hands. He ordered the second watch to the east rampart and took the third for himself. Between these shifts he convened with Sam in the counting room to confirm wildfire allotments. 20 casks remained for Catapult C, 15 for Catapult D, and 5 in reserves for a contingency Sam refused to name aloud. Sansa sat on the floor nearby, repairing torn leather gloves for the archers, her needle flashing deftly as she listened without comment. She had become like the iron stanchions bracing the wall, unadorned, resolute. Around midday, Robb arrived from the southern camp lines to review the pass lines. His cheeks were raw from the ride. Grey wind patted at his heels, and the bigger direwolf bumped shoulders with Ghost, exchanging measured sniffs that passed for greeting. Robb spread a new map, a crisp vellum sheet, bearing every trench and stockade lash that Jon's watchers had carved between Queensgate and Icemark. I said once we were pups herding lions, he remarked. Now it seems pups herding storms. Jon traced a finger along a narrow corridor near Oakwood Dyke. Yesterday we found small drifts that had thawed from below. The dead worm through the softest spots. We need netting strung under the next freeze. Robb's lips tightened. Mason lines were already stretched, but I'll press the glovers. Better rawhide nets than a breach. His resolve did not mask exhaustion. Under the lamplight, the new crown's copper rim left faint grooves across his brow. He removed it now, rubbing the sore skin. Stannis men grumble that their king sleeps under canvas while I hold stone. Stone means cold, Jon answered. A tent can be moved if the wall falls. They shared the bleak humor because there was no other kind left to share. By candle hour he had walked the entire rampart length, talked archers through new drill patterns, sparred with a handful of Barrow Knights until sweat beaded his back despite the freeze, then helped Bran refine a proposed code of signal fires for emergencies. Bran's cheeks reddened with excitement each time he described colored pyres, tallow mixed with copper salts for green, iron filings for gold. Davos supplied a quiet suggestion about using the Blackwater's alchemists, only half jest. Each small detail wedged another stone in the dam, holding back dread. Afternoon deepened to violet. Jon stood with Sir Roderick at the West Gate parapet, reviewing the first incoming train from Ned's Southron supply host. 14 sledges, 2 wagons, 1 caged goatherd to feed the direwolves. Ragged banners of Tully blue and red hung limp from the wagon tops, where crossbowmen scanned the trees. Roderick relaxed a fraction. Lines of tension around his mustache eased. No arrow fall, he sighed. We see ghosts in daylight now. John frowned. Better ghosts in the mind than spears in the chest. He lingered to watch the last wagon pass under the gate's half-lowered portcullis. Only then did he turn away, and glimpsed something at the corner of vision. A faint motion along the tree line where the snow shimmered unnaturally, folding like a curtain. He stared, breath held. Nothing moved. Yet Ghost stiffened. The direwolf's ears flattened, then he unleashed a single bark. No challenge, merely recognition of other. John narrowed eyes and saw it. An indistinct silhouette, tall as a man and thin, etched in rippling cold. The figure's edges quivered like heat above a kettle, except its color drained all warmth. Instinct sent Joan's hand to Longclaw's hilt. He signaled 2 archers without word. They knocked dragonglass arrowheads and loosed. The arrows sliced the still air, but the moving shimmer dissolved. They struck nothing but snow. John remained, pulse thundering, until Sir Roderick's gloved hand rested on his shoulder. We're seeing ghosts indeed. Yet when John looked down, Ghost was growling at empty ground. The prints of his own paws turned outward in a guard stance. Dusk collapsed into full night. Shafts of emerald aurora lit the sky again, pulsing like slow heartbeats. Fires kindled atop every tower. The wall's face glowed orange. John could not sleep. He circled the outer yard, past Ned who dozed sitting upright in a wheelback chair near the gates, cloak around his shoulders. Past Sam hunched over parchment copying wildling oral histories into neat script. Past Sansa in Maester Aemon's old solar. She had taken to reciting nursery rhymes to 2 small refugee girls from Molestown. Her voice floated down the corridor, melodic but subdued, as though afraid volume might shatter something precious. Finally he found his way to the armory's rear courtyard, where Lady Lyanna trained with a giant mace nearly her height. Sparks flew each time she clanged against an anvil post, erected for strength drills. Her breaths fogged in the frosty air. When she saw John, she merely grunted and resumed, refusing any greeting. She wielded that mace as though it were an extension of her anger, not a tool. John left, content. She needed no further words. Around the witching hour, a runner crashed up the stair from the inner keep, wide-eyed, half-winded. "Ravens," he rasped. "From Eastwatch. Great urgency." John took the scroll case. Eastwatch's maester spelled news in a clenched hand. Ships in the shivering sea had sighted icebergs drifting south in unnatural numbers, some the size of castle keeps. More ominous, ghost lanterns flickered upon those bergs at midnight. Green and blue, whites piled in silent companies by the thousand. The corpses were massing for a crossing. Eastwatch braced for an onslaught by water. They requested barrels of pitch, crossbow quarrels, and, if the gods were merciful, fire-breathing beasts. John's stomach dropped. Dragons again. The omen repeated itself like a refrain. Distant wings, far-off flames. He thought of Daenerys, a queen rumored but unseen, her path a thread weaving through the far east. Could her course bring her across the narrow sea before the ice crossed it? Fate had a fickle sense of drama. He summoned Sam, who rubbed red-rimmed eyes and read the message thrice. "If bergs carry them, we cannot burn the sea," Sam muttered. "But we can shatter it with fire from above. Wildfire floats, but if we sling casks on trailing ropes..." John nodded. "Tell the alchemists to prepare double-walled casks. The outer shell will freeze, inner remains volatile. We float them near bergs and arrow them from the wall." It was desperate, half-crazed, yet so was the enemy. They worked until first gray of morn filtered through cracks at roofline. Then horns brayed 3 slow notes, one for rangers returning. John hurried to the gate. A lone horse dragged itself through drifts, foam frozen to its muzzle. The rider slumped, barely tethered. Rob and Ned converged beside John as sentries hauled the man down. He was the younger Rill scout, coat ripped at the thigh, blood black on snow. "Ambush," he croaked. 2 days' ride west, bodies buried beneath ice as nets. They rose when we passed, dragged my brother down. His eyes glistened with memory. But something else walked among them. Not dead, not Walker. A man. What manner of man? Jon demanded gently. Tall, lean, wore ragged maesters chain clipped in half. One eye white, the other black. He carried a staff of black stone. The dead followed him like hounds. The words shivered out before the rider collapsed. They whisked him to the infirmary, leaving the description echoing like chimes in a dead city. Ned spoke first. A necromancer. Perhaps a traitor of the Citadel, Sam muttered, lips pursed. There were legends. Valyrian stone rods etched in runes of binding. Most were lost though, south in Old Town. Jon's gaze slid north. We meet whites that move without walkers. A commander among them, living could be worse. Plans altered. Jon now needed a strike team to ride west. Hunt this black-eyed man, and sever the nerve controlling the dead. He insisted on leading, but Ned forbade it. The wall stands because you stand, Ned said. If the necromancer wishes to break our heart, he'd lure you away. Send another heartbeat. Unexpectedly, Theon stepped forward. Shorn of his princely locks, wrists still ringed by iron memory, he leveled earnest eyes upon Jon. Let me redeem my name, he said. Who better than a Greyjoy to sail through marsh ice? I know stealth roads. Give me 8 silent men and a wound to pay. His voice trembled, equal parts shame and hunger for absolution. Robb's hand rested on the pommel of his sword. Jon studied Theon. Into those green eyes flowed Winterfell's flaming roofs, Bran's crippled legs, Rickon's tears at mother's absence, but also Robb's laughter long before dread, Theon's jokes in the training yard, the shared ale at a harvest feast. Loyalty balanced on a jagged edge. Jon looked to Ned. Ned's expression was stony yet not dismissive. One chance. Jon spoke slowly. Bring me proof of this staff or the man's head. Betray us, and the wall itself shall pass judgment. Theon bowed low, shoulders shaking. I'll bring more than a head. He assembled 8 volunteers. 2 Bear Islanders, 1 Night's Watch builder named Stones who had lost all his family to whites, 3 wildling ghost scouts, 1 Barrow Knight lithe as a cat, and the gaunt oarsman Black Mere, known for rowing small boats between Bravos and the frozen shore. They prepared a hidden cutter sled across the shivering sea's tributary, loaded with 6 wildfire flasks triple-sealed, dragon-glass spears, a handful of good stark steel. Before dawn they slid into gloom westward, torches dark, hope thinner than the wind. Jon wrote of the necromancer in Ravens to Old Town, to Manderley scholars, to Dragonstone's libraries, even to the Eyrie, whose maester still owed Ned a favor from younger days. Each message sealed with urgent ink. Fine mention of black stone staffs wielded in the long night. A weapon of command. 2 days later, as wind howled a new note, a shape soared out of northern clouds. A massive owl. Black feathered eyes glowing pale gold. It circled once, then dove toward Bran perched in a sling on Hodor's shoulders near the south tower parapet. Bran raised an arm and the owl landed, talons gripping his bracer. Bran's shout carried in the wind. Jon arrived as Bran coaxed a woven reed ring from the bird's claw. 3 carved bone beads, each etched with an indecipherable glyph, strung on a thong. A gift, Bran said, from someone called Leaf. Sam traced each bead. Children of the forest. He swallowed. They watch, still. Bran placed the beads in Jon's hand. The wordwood bone felt warm, as though breathing. Jon tucked them into a pouch at his belt. He could not read the marks, but somewhere deep the runes whispered. That night he walked alone along the eastern ice face. The aurora, brighter than ever, pulsed overhead in electric ribbons. He pressed his palm to the ice. Cold leached through the glove until his knuckles ached. He thought of Nymeria's howl, echoing across rivers, of Arya's unknowable path, of Ygritte's freckles dancing in lost firelight. Guards against forgetting life exists beyond walls. Footsteps crunched. Ned joined him, folding arms against the chill. They stood silent, minutes before Ned spoke. You've built a realm of different banners here, unified by worse fears. That takes more than orders. He looked sideways. You've grown into a lord. Jon's breath plumed. A lord whose people may die tomorrow. Snow settled on Longclaw's crossguard. No leader stops every death. Ned's voice roughened. I could not shield your mother. I could not save every man at the Trident. Duty is building something the dead would be proud to lie beneath. Jon turned, muscles tight. Will you tell me of my mother now? Ned's gaze softened like spring thaw around stones, though winter raged. I owe you truth, yet time must fit that blade in its scabbard. Hold this wall first. Then I will cut the knot. A faint smile, and will speak of quieter dawns. Jon accepted. Dawn still seemed far. For now he would hold. 3 heartbeats later, the warning horn shrieked. One breath, then another, then 3 in rapid succession. Eastwatch's signal mirrored across tower beacons. Approaching forces. The camp erupted. Jon sprinted for the stairs. From the crest, lanterns spotted a ragged column emerging from the haunted forest. 20 men staggering under weight. Not whites. Survivors. They bore the sigils of Dawnbreak Vale Rangers, soaked in ice and blood. Their leader, Sir Tomard Heddle, shouted up. Giants on the march, 2 leagues out, crookhorns echoing off ice valleys. Jon's throat closed. Giants. Not the half-dead enslaved ones. They had broken free of chains. Real ones. Shaggy and furious, perhaps roused by the necromancer or driven south by something more ancient. Either way, the wall would be hammered before dawn. He set the alarm bells ringing. Runners fetched Robb. Stannis captains, Lyanna, Sansa's healer squads. Casks of wildfire rolled to ramparts. Dragonglass-tipped scorpions primed. Somewhere below, Bran murmured to ravens fluttering restless as though they felt the tremor of giant footfalls already. The first booms reached them as deep earth rumbles. Snow dust drifted from rampart stones with each tremor. Men swallowed fear like syrup of nightshade. Jon paced the merlons, every step a wordless vow. Torches flared along the entire line. Ned stood to Jon's left, Robb to his right, Sam behind with a bundle of glass-tipped quarrels clutched like holy relics. Gray wind and ghost howled, twin echoes inside the human roar. Out of dark tree line lumbered shapes bigger than cathedral pillars, each carrying a trunk club or a boulder bulging with ice. Their eyes shone dull red, anger or enchantment. Behind them flowed thousands of whites, a crooked river of moving dusk. Above that surge hovered pale figures astride skeletal elk. Walkers wielding spears that glittered star blue. Jon drew Longclaw. Ned unsheathed Icebreaker, an ancient greatsword newly reforged. Robb lifted his Lionjaw war mace. Stannis' men lit their stag-heart braziers, the smoke tinted orange by wildfire flares. Sansa's archers took aim, knuckles white as parchment. A hush deeper than death descended, an instant where lungs forgot air. Then Jon's voice split the quiet, raw but steady, loose. The night exploded into streaks of green and orange, and crimson. Wildfire jars shattered among the first ranks of whites, erupting into gouts that clung to fleshless limbs. Dragonglass bolts thwanged from scorpions, punching through chest cages. Giants roared, hefting mighty clubs to smash icy debris into the wall. Blocks fractured, yet the 100-foot mass held, shedding shards that scythed down the dead below. Above the chaos, walkers hurled spears of unforgiving frigidity. One shattered at Jon's feet, freezing a 3-foot circle of rampart. He leapt back as men scrambled. Lyanna's bears hurled pots of lamp oil ignited mid-arc. Flames rained like meteors. On the south flank, Stannis knights rolled trebuchets forward, launching blackwood beams wrought with iron tips that crashed into the giant's knees. One giant toppled with a thunderous groan, burying 20 whites beneath its girth. Another seized the beam mid-flight, snapped it like tinder, and hurled shrapnel upward, killing 2 archers and taking a chunk from the parapet. Dust billowed, mingling with snow and ash. "Arch down," Sam shouted, hauling the wounded men clear, bandaging even as he dragged. Farther west, Bran perched beside a brazier, eyes glazed white, murmuring in a voice not his own. Ravens swarmed overhead, thousands strong, forming a living cloud that dove at walkers, pecking eyes, breaking concentration. A walker staggered under the onslaught, A single dragonglass arrow fired by Sansa, her first kill of the night, punched through its throat. It burst into frost shards that cascaded over whites like foul snow. Jon pressed along the parapet, shouting volleys, pointing where the line faltered. Every command he issued fed the living force until they moved as a single creature. Fear became a rhythm to ride, not drown in. A tremor jolted the feet again, heavier. A giant, largest yet, slammed its shoulder into the base of the wall, digging clawed fingers into the ice as if scaling. Ice fractured inward, thin spider web lines creeping dangerously. Wildfires sloshed overhead but could not douse its stubborn rise. Jon sprinted along a catwalk, phantom in his heart, until he reached the scorpion nested above the fracture. He yanked free the securing pin, shouting for slack. 2 Bear Islanders joined. Together, they angled the scorpion downward. Jon wrangled one massive spear tip. Obsidian fused into iron, into the trough. He waited until the giant's head heaved above Merlin's. Cold breath gusted reek of old blood and deeper nightmares. Jon pulled the lever. The spear shot straight into the giant's gaping maw jochto. A sick aurora of frostlight burst from within as obsidian exploded through palate and skull. The giant's shoulders spasmed. Eyes spilled blue fire. Then it toppled backward, shattering on its escort of whites, flattening a dozen. The fracture in the wall sealed itself in a groan of cracking ice. Cheers erupted, ragged but alive. Yet the swarm below did not abate. Another wave advanced, thicker than before. Amid them moved the necromancer, ragged robe, staff of glossy midnight stone, one eye black, the other milky. He raised his staff, and the swarm halted. Silence returned like a held breath. The necromancer lifted both arms. Frost spiraled upward, coiling into vortex until it reached the walkers hovering on skeletal elk. They tilted heads, accepting some unheard command. Then both walkers hurled their spears high, one east, one west, drawing arcs of crystalline light. Where they landed, the drifts erupted. From the snow rose figures laced with bone-white armor and scaled wings of ice. Small dragons sculpted of winter, each the size of a warhorse. Their eyes glowed blue. They beat wings clumsily but rose nonetheless, frost fanning out in swirling sheets. Ice dragons. Sam breathed beside Jon. Gods, save us. Jon's mind leapt. Wildfire worked on flesh dead or living, but ice that never felt pulse. Perhaps heat still burned. He barked at Sansa. Signal catapult D. She turned, blew 2 blasts on a brass horn. Down below, Stannis' men hauled at chains. The trebuchet arm creaked, launching a sphere of clay packed around thick lead. Inside, wildfire. It arced toward the nearest ice dragon. At mid-flight, Jon held breath. The necromancer twitched his staff and a wave of cold washed outward, frosting the projectile. But Longclaw flared in Jon's grip, Valyrian steel humming like struck bell. He slashed downward through empty air, and somehow the motion carried beneath rock, beneath frost. The very wind obeyed. A whisper of invisible force parted from blade, slicing through the cold shield an instant before the projectile struck. The clay ball shattered on the ice dragon's chest. Green fire exploded, flooding hollows. The creature shrieked in agony of breaking glaciers. Steam roared upward, thick enough to blind half the parapet. When it cleared, shards of brittle wing littered the field, melting into slush. One dragon down. She. The second ice dragon emitted a keening roar, something between wail and stormwind, then folded wings and drove itself upward in thrusts of frigid gusts, streaking for the gap above Catapult C. The shadows swallowed its underbelly. Jon lost track. Moments later, a roar of wind hammered the rampart. The dragon dove jaws gaping, but what lunged from the darkness above it made breath stop. 3 living dragons, obsidian, bronze, emerald, plummeted from cloud split. Their roars shuddered ribcages. The ice dragon tried to veer, but the emerald dragon, smallest, slammed it broadside. Scales of ice cracked. Bronze flames slithered across the impact, shattering a wing. The obsidian leviathan dove claws first, seizing the crystalline spine and ripping. The ice dragon crumbled to hail. The living dragons wheeled, breaths flickering orange-red. Atop obsidian beast's shoulders sat a rider in dark scale mail, Daenerys Stormborn, silver hair snapping like a banner of moonlight. Her eyes, visible even at a distance, glimmered with the stunned recognition of seeing the wall's watchers braced beneath. She raised an arm in salute toward Jon, though whether she saw him or only sensed, he could not know. Below, the necromancer staggered back. He slammed the staff into snow, sending ripples through the white horde. Dead men froze mid-stride. The giants rumbled confusion. The necromancer turned, melted into the tree shadows, fleeing. In that instant, from the west, Theon's strike team burst out. They rode low sledges dragged by rangy elk, cutting directly across the white flank. Wildfire flasks lit their path. At their center, Theon brandished the black stone staff, severed from its master. As he dashed, the staff pulsed with faint azure cracks, as though broken from within. Jon shouted to open the west gate. The sledges swooped through, veering up the ramp. Wights, leaderless, milled aimlessly. Giants thundered into trees, bereft of direction. Walkers hissed, turned mounts toward the north, choosing retreat rather than face dragonfire. Living dragons circled once, unleashed gouts of flame like comets across the fleeing army, incinerating scores. The battle did not end with cheers. It ended in stunned disbelief, as the enemy fell apart like frost sculptures meeting summer rain. Fires raged in trenches. Smoke drifted. The wall's defenders stood swaying, unsure whether to raise swords or kneel in thanks. Jon met Theon halfway down the ramp. Theon stumbled, bruised, eyes wild, but he thrust the severed staff forward. Up close it looked like polished obsidian laced with pulsing veins of light. But a crack split its length. Energy hissed out like trapped breath. Jon took it gingerly. I shot up his arm, then faded. Whatever power dwelt inside was dying. Theon laughed and wept in one breath, sagging. Told you I'd bring more than a head. Jon grasped his shoulder. You brought a dawn. Dawn indeed crested the horizon, pale gold warming to blush. Jon turned to behold the dragons settling on the open field between trench lines. Snow hissed beneath their talons. Men parted, some dropping to knees. From the largest's shoulders, Daenerys slid. She wore no crown, only black leather layered in plate shaped like wings. She strode forward, meeting Ned halfway in a hush that engulfed the yard. Ned inclined his head. She returned the bow. You saved what I hoped to protect, she said, her voice carrying. And I saved what I feared was already lost. Her gaze flicked to Jon, lingering. Something indefinable passed between. Jon stepped forward, staff still in hand. Winter's heart broke tonight, he said. But it may not be the last shard we face. Daenerys' eyes narrowed on the cracked staff. I flew following a dream of cold dragons. It led me here. She laid a hand upon the dark stone. The cracks widened. Ice dust sang like tiny bells. Then the staff fractured, fell to pieces that crumbled into black sand amid the snow. Something changed in the wind, less spiteful, almost soft. The auroras shimmered then faded, leaving only faint silver bands melting into sunlight. The wall of cold that had loomed beyond the forest seemed to draw back, as though the night itself inhaled. Mormont's bare cloak rustled. Perhaps the long night sees that dawn still has teeth, he rumbled. For one fleeting heartbeat, hope spread like warmth down spines. Then reality returned. Eastwatch still held fleets of icebergs, walkers still lurked. Southern realms still cracked under civil crowns, and dragons bred new fear among men who did not understand their flame. Yet dread no longer reigned absolute. Dawn shimmered on the wall's frozen face, transforming it into a soaring citadel of rose gold. Jon breathed deep. Around him the living began to move again, archers stamping feet, wildlings throwing snowballs in manic relief, darrywolves nosing at dragon tracks, Theon supported by a Bear Island guard who half carried him toward the healers. Above, Bran's ravens circled in lazy orbits, not in warning, but in something akin to celebration. Jon turned to Daenerys. Welcome to the wall, he said. We've been waiting for you. Her answering smile was weary but certain. And I for you, She extended a hand. He met it. Palm to palm, warm flame met stubborn snow, and in that grip spun the fragile axis of realms, fire and ice, day and night, life and death. Behind them the wall kept its silent vigil, a monument to endings, and to beginnings born the space between. Work awaited, fallen to burn, trenches to refill, alliances to negotiate, shadows still prowling beyond sight. But for that slender moment, two hands clasped beneath dawn's first light, and the world paused at the cusp of a tale not yet written, breathless with the chance that even the longest night need not last forever.